Looks like everything is connected. Headphones, all the good stuff. I should really find a new place to loop these headphones through. And maybe I'll just move this over here. I have like the gaming position for all my keyboard setup. So now I just need to fix that. Okay. Hello to Brian James, Six of Swords, Doof, very nice to see you. Let's see. Will Black Lodge Games show up here? It is extremely unlikely. Yeah, it's real design. What you have to do is you have to spell it like this. And that is the correct way of spelling design. So if anybody would like to join in on the stream, I'm currently in my Discord. You could join the Discord channel, and I will. Well, you could join one of the voice channels. Let me know. Hello, Dorian. Nice to see you, buddy. Always nice to see you. I hope you're excited for tomorrow's game. I will drag you up from one of the other voice channels and into the stream recording if you would like to join in. And I'm going to turn off some of these. Yeah, we're going to turn off some of my special things here. So we have a few different. So we have a few. How do I put this? We have a few different things to get to today, all of which have been centered on Twitter drama from a few different people. However, they've all been somewhat related, I think. And sadly, we were intending to have Dying Breed Tabletop on today. Not Nerd Cognito, who is a very, very odd fellow. I don't know why this person talks at all. I don't know why they produce what they do, except for making fun of millennials and recycling those jokes for Zoomers. A very, very strange creature, if I had to describe them myself. But I think. So here's the thing. Let's check in with you folks. How's everybody doing, first of all? Are there any preferences insofar as what we tackle first? Do you guys want to tackle the Black Lodge Games video, which was on whether or not the OSR is too hostile to story? We can also tackle a little bit of discussion about one-to-one time. That's pretty fun. That's been really fun in particular. I got into some aggressive arguments about that. And besides that, Doof, hello! I've not properly dragged you in. Here we go. Hello!
Mic check, mic check.
I can hear you on my end, and I'm pretty sure that the stream can as well.
That's great.
Alright, I just figured, yeah, just confirm. We're good.
Now, can you walk me through the recent Twitter drama? I almost missed all of the one-to-one time stuff. I saw I saw one of your quote tweets on Gelatinous Rube, and I think I responded to that one.
Yeah, so the recent Twitter drama has been yet another, I guess, like a public accounting of the BroSR. It happens about once a week, once every 2 weeks now, where somebody asks, I don't know what the BroSR is. Oh, we got like 10 people in here now. Cool. Everybody's catching up, jumping in. Like I said, it's a public accounting of the BroSR. Somebody asks, what the heck is this BroSR thing I keep hearing about? They already don't know what the OSR is. What the hell is the BroSR? Of course, we respond by saying it's the Brazilian portion of the OSR and not explaining any further. Because what other information would you need? And that just kicks off a lot of other discussions about one-to-one time, about the OSR itself. And this collided with Black Lodge Games starting a new clickbaity Twitter war. At least this time they were acknowledging it. And yeah, so it's just kind of like this roiling mask of a lot of the usual topics with a lot of new people, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So we're looking at the Dying Breed tabletop thing. I think actually, you know what? No, he didn't delete it. Okay. So if you look on the stream now, I'm gonna zoom in so that's a little bit easier to see. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. So Dying Breed Tabletop, who wanted to come on today, did make the good faith, at least acknowledgement that we could have a conversation with each other. I sadly didn't have the opportunity to, but he got one step closer than Black Lodge Games did. Said that one-to-one time is bullshit. It's impossible. You can't do it. Yes, you can pretend, but you can't run combat in any edition in the same amount of time it would actually take. The same for searching. Okay, guys, roll dice, and then let's all wait 10 minutes. And I reply with my video. Hello, Crossface. Hi, Wigma. Randos, nice to see you as well. That was the ages ago when I first joined Earn the Pedantic server. That was Particularist objection that actually made it into the video. Was there are things that you can do that take. He wasn't paying attention to like minute to minute stuff, but he was saying, hey, there's stuff that you could do that takes longer than 1 day in game, so there can't possibly be any one-to-one time. And I had to explain in the video, no, it's not about, it's not, it's an abbreviation for the rule's full and active description. It's not the entirety of the rule, otherwise we wouldn't need any other explanation, but we say one-to-one time because it's 1 day in real life to 1 day in the game. And there's a whole bunch of other modifiers go on that, but we need a term to describe it with, to refer to it, and that tends to be something that's a little bit shorter, catchier than the rule's full and active description, something a little bit easier to tweet about, you know? And that's what I was going to explain to Dying Breed Tabletop. I posted the video, and they got very upset with me.
Ooh.
He said, "You are not addressing my examples. I want a serious explanation. If you can't provide one, I'm assuming you're full of shit." And I said, no, the definition is covered 30 seconds into the video, and then I did my usual thing where if you give people, hey, John Rock, so if you give people like exact timestamps of, I had to deal with this in Aaron server. If you giving people exact timestamps doesn't actually do anything for the conversation. It just confirms whether or not this person on the other end is either crazy, acting in bad faith, or like specifically trying to gaslight you. So I think he just got more acrimonious as time goes on. He did apologize later. What was he? He said, I did some self-reflection today. I owe you all an apology. I've bemoaned the infighting in the OSR and the tabletop RPG space. And then, like an ass, I did things to magnify it. Regardless of who's right or wrong, my actions did not support my words, and for that I'm sincerely sorry. So he apologized, which is cool. He's a cool guy. I don't know if he's a cool guy, but that was a cool thing of him to do. So that was one fight that we've just been going through. Out of like the 5 yesterday, that was one. What have you been seeing on Twitter on your end?
I've only seen parts of this. I know that I don't remember if it was Crafty Matt or Crafty Matt responding to someone. That was the latest thing I saw. Wait, let me check.
It's fun. I'm in Crossface's. Well, I say Crossface. I guess it's technically the basic expert Crossface, and there's like 2 other guys that run it, but it's a gilded server. Crafty Matt's in there, and he talks all the time, and we're on good terms now. I don't know why or how, but I guess
Hot damn.
there was just a general ceasefire. People kept asking, like, are you guys okay with each other? I'm like, well, I don't like the Jonah Jameson gif, but like, realistically speaking, we're fine. We haven't spoken in 2 years. So now we're cool, I guess.
This just happened. But do you know what Aaron responded to on his channel?
Yes, because I had the video
Black
up
Lodge?
here,
Oh.
and we're gonna I would like to. I would actually like to watch it over the stream, and you are welcome to stick around for it because I'd like somebody to bounce ideas off of.
Let's go.
All right, everybody ready? Everybody got your seatbelts on? Popcorn? Let's see here. Crafty Matt has made a face turn. Yes, he has. The one thing I'm gonna do before we actually watch the video, I'm gonna pull up their tweets and my responses to them because they did some great marketing for this video. So, uh, Black Lodge Games said in this space, well, they said two things. One, sandboxing is not an excuse to forego roleplay. Roleplay is the core driving experience of tabletop role playing games, and labeling it story gaming is just a coat for lacking imagination and the ability to be in the moment. We are crossing the clickbait Rubicon today. Won't you join us? This was, God, this took me back because when I first interacted with Jeffro Johnson, and I'll show you guys once we're finished reviewing their video. My first major interaction with Jeffro Johnson, was writing the article version of the video that we're about to watch. Because I used to have a pretty similar position, and most people who come into the hobby, hell, you've seen it on Aaron's server with like anytime story gaming comes up, there's a really big push to like define certain people into or out of the hobby.
Yeah, it happens pretty much every time there's a wave of new players where you see these kind of takes.
Yeah, to where they're like, why do you, why are you guys so upset with the idea of story? And it's like, well, no, when we say story gaming, we mean a very specific, there's a very specific phenomenon that we're actually talking about. Howdy, Armored Alcatraz. That's one of my Lancer players. Let's see here. Rando says Black Lodge game seems to be someone that has stumbled into the OSR corner of D&D, doesn't really understand the terms people are using. Well, they don't know how to use reaction rolls. So I wasn't expecting them to really have an idea of what was going on. I found out actually through this thread that they muted me, which kind of sucks. Because now there's not going to be any fireworks. Except in
Do you know
formats
if
like
they
this.
actually run games? Do they run games publicly?
I think they ran like a session. I think they finally did get around to running a session of Cyberpunk.
Oh.
And then like because I think they played the game like 10 years ago or something like that. I think they played like 2 5e games and didn't like it. And so they've just been reading and talking about it. Like they have a guy who's really into riffs. And doesn't also appears to like not run riffs games, but like makes videos about creating characters and inventing character backstories for a character that they don't play.
Oh man.
So
That's
just
lame.
they're like no games, but they're like desperately trying to pull themselves out of it. So, are you guys ready to watch this video? Oh, sorry, go ahead. I cut you off.
I hope they are trying.
Yeah, I think they managed to get one or two in.
Alright, let's watch this.
Let's do it.
Back to the Black Lodge Games podcast. I am your host, Matt, and with me, as always, is my compatriot, Nick. Today, we are going to be talking about why you, particularly people in the OSR, are completely wrong about story and character backstories in RPGs. Maybe not completely wrong, but definitely missing the point. So, Nick, why don't you start us off?
Very much so. So, there seems to be this very strange antagonism, this very strong all or nothing mentality where any kind of free thought, either on behalf of the GM or the player, to what kind of feel, what kind of things may be happening in a particular game, that is wrong. That is story gaming.
Right.
That's railroading. That's creating your own plot, writing your own story, your own novel.
All right, I'm going to pause this because I need to do two things. I need to increase the playback speed to 1.5, and I'm also going to stream inside of this chat here so that you can see it in real time. Because I just realized
Thank you.
yeah, you're probably watching it like 10 seconds behind me.
No, I actually pulled up their YouTube video and synced it pretty well, but this
Oh,
is
yeah.
way better. Let's go.
Alrighty.
The correct answer is a total absence of any kind of focus or attention or effort on this front, which is completely wrong. Definitely, if you're going full bore writing a novel for your character's backstory, or you're establishing a campaign, a chronicle, a saga, with defined story beats and plot points from A to B to C all the way to the conclusion, that definitely is wrong. That's not what we're talking about here. But yeah, you're missing a huge part of what role-playing actually is and how to do it best if you completely abandon that, if you eschew that
or how to
mindset
do it at
completely.
all. Yeah, I think
Or
for
how
a
to
lot
do
of
it at
people.
all.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think maybe we should start with like backstories here.
Yeah.
Like, that's a huge issue. What is a backstory? What should you be writing down? Should you be writing down anything? No. What is it? Why should we be doing it?
And what possible value could it add to your game?
Right.
And what damage could it do to your game as well?
True.
Because like we said, you're not all completely wrong about this, but there seems to be this overly autistic notion of what story is in a game, and an overly autistic analysis of like character backstories in particular. I think in terms of like what we would agree is the story in a game is basically like the history of what happens throughout play. You know, there's not, like you said, there's not a preconceived plot. We're not saying, you know, this adventure leads to the next adventure, leads to the next adventure, and then we're going to have the epic conclusion. And I've got, as a GM, this is completely mapped out already. It's definitely, you know, it just emerges from what the players and characters do.
All right, I'm going to pause it there for a second. Have you ever heard a different definition from the? Have you ever heard a different definition from anybody about? I don't know, just like play in general.
No,
sorry,
not from anyone that matters.
yeah.
Like, but I have not interacted with anyone who actually cares about story in RPGs since in like probably 3 years now.
Just the
But
thing that's.
oh,
go ahead.
I don't know how it's like in more new school circles, but organic storytelling is pretty, like, that's the status quo, right?
Yeah, at least in the OSR. To my knowledge, when people talk about story, when people are sort of pitching the OSR or adjacent communities as like, no, there's still, listen, there's still cool stuff that happens. You're gonna get to do cool stuff. It's just not like the GM's plan for it. The story is what happens when you sit around the table and tell your friends about what happened in the campaign, right?
Sure.
That feels like my understanding of it. And in fact, that description is like pretty much straight out of John Mollison's mouth, like back when the Broasar was arguing about story gaming, which was a different thing from having story or recounting it retrospectively. But I guess we'll let these people continue on. That's exactly what their issue is.
It's an organic process.
Yeah, it's completely organic, and if you're doing it right, nobody should really know where it's going, because you want things to happen spontaneously, and that's the kind of most fun aspect of these games, is this like active participation in this thing where you don't know what's going to happen necessarily. And in terms of the character backstories, I understand the criticism of the player who writes a 12-page short story about who their character is, where they came from, and all of this, because most of the time, first of all, it's going to be overly long and bad and not terribly relevant to the game at hand. But a lot of times those players are doing things like, for lack of a better term, including like prophecies, you know, about their character and telegraphing what is going to happen in the game. Obviously that's wrong, but I think if you don't have a backstory at all, If you don't have a history of your character, just like this would be kind of a history of a game would be the story. If you don't have anything for your character, you're really missing out on something.
Yeah.
You're actually missing out on several things. The first of which is having.
You know, to pause right there, give us a blind reaction. How do you feel about that statement?
Sounds like they are they are prioritizing the product of the story, or like they are looking to have a story as an end product, not like the game in itself is not good enough.
Huh. Yeah. Okay. So like the mechanics, okay, it sounds like they need a reason for playing the game that extends outside the different advantages and fun parts of the game. Is that like an accurate description of your position?
Yeah.
Okay. Phew, that makes me think, because so far I haven't heard anything terrifically onerous. I have heard some things that I think are just wrong. I don't think that you actually are missing out on a lot when it comes to the backstory of a different. When it comes to the backstory of, like, if I played in Jeffro's AD&T game, I made a druid. The druid was cool. It was fun. I had a bunch of bonus spells. That's pretty neat. And I figured the draw for me was all the stuff that was going to happen ahead of me, and not necessarily the stuff that happened behind me. I figured there were going to be events in game that allowed me to hammer out portions of my backstory, quote unquote, or what this character's internal mindset or state of mind was, just by virtue of, like, okay, do we kill this guy? Like, we take a bunch of prisoners. Does Ash Gregworth the Druid say that to kill the prisoners this time, or does he say to let them go, or does he suggest some alternative use for them? Right, and that was going to I knew that situations like that were going to come up in the game because we were playing the game rules as written, so I wasn't overly worried about making a decision for myself before actually playing through the game. Like, does that track?
Yup.
All right, that's kind of what I was feeling. So I'll continue
I
on.
would like.
Oh, go
Yes,
ahead.
I wanna hear where they're going with this.
Yeah, because they're about to start listing out reasons, which is going to be interesting.
Having even a base idea of how to roleplay your character at the outside of the game. But the second thing is you're missing the opportunity to feed the GM with fuel and potentially new NPCs and additional ideas that he can incorporate into the game at the outset. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. To go back to this meta.
All right, I'm gonna stop that there. Didn't he say not too long ago that the players are? He has an issue with the 12-page backstories, not just because they're long and typically boring, kind of fan fictiony, which I absolutely agree with. I think everybody's pretty much agreed on that, and but also because they were sort of insisting or predicting on specific events in game.
Mm-hmm.
I think he did that like less than a minute ago. So, like, what would be the big?
Now, right now, he's arguing in the favor of long backstories, but he hasn't gotten to finish his argument yet.
It's just that specifically felt like it needed to be nitpicked, because, like, if you go off and you say I don't like the fact that players insist on specific events happening in game by virtue of their backstories, but then say, oh well, it's so cool that I can create specific events by virtue of these NPCs and events that you describe in your backstory, and then place them in the game. I feel like you've made a contradiction there.
Yeah, definitely. I want to hear if they have anything to say against having longer backstories, or if they're even going to mention it at all.
I don't think even length is the issue. I think they're fine if this is all cut down to a paragraph. But the thing I wanted to harp on was like the specific event, right? Oh man, these players are expecting to see this thing in game, and then they say, but it's cool when you could take a specific event that players are expecting to see in game from their backstory and then place it in.
Metaphor of an organic process. Story emerging as an organic process. Nobody really knows where it's going to go. To keep with that metaphor, you need fertile soil for
Yes.
a story, for a character to grow. And if you're just relying on what stats you rolled, what feats you have, what disciplines you have, the things which are on your character sheet only, you have no idea who your character is. The GM has no idea who your character is and how to feed off of those characters, whatever size your party is. And so, I think a back
Just briefly, I'm gonna be keeping notes. The moment I'm pretty much gonna give you power over the pause button here. Let me know when you would like to pause it, and then we'll go back over what these guys have said because I'm taking notes on this stuff. But I know that we want to let them like loop through an argument first.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
story, the word backstory, it's become, what would you say? It's become this term that everybody just defaults to use.
Right.
The word is itself a misnomer.
Yeah,
It's
and
not a story.
Yes, it's not a story in the sense of it is a narrative that is written down in the form of like a novel or a short story. It definitely should
Right.
not be that, for sure.
Correct.
But the like you said, like having fertile soil for the game to actually have this, a bunch of cool things to happen in it. That makes sense together. Primarily, that's on the GM's part to either choose a good pre-made setting and fill it out with their own kind of personal changes and touches to it, create their own NPCs that exist within this predefined world, or for them to come up with a world on their own and a compelling world with interesting things to do in it.
Right.
Like that's definitely a huge part of that is on the GM. But the best games that I've run and the best games that I've played in have all had a lot of input from the players at the get-go, and it's not input in the sense of like, yeah, the players are also helping us to fill out the map and come out with factions and things like. It's
No.
not that at all.
No. These aren't assistant directors
Yeah,
in movie production.
exactly. That is a very good way to put it. They're not that at all. What it is like if you find a good setting book or just a good GM's resource, usually you're going to find woven into that text somewhere plot hooks, for lack of a better term. I know people are probably screaming that I used the word plot here as well, which is crazy to me. But story
Look
seeds.
past the term.
Yeah, look past the terms
It's
for
called
a
plot
second.
hook.
Try and
You're
focus
not
on the
a
actual
moron.
ideas. Yeah, if you're not a
Yeah.
moron, try and focus on the ideas here and not the exact terminology we're using. But a lot of these books, they have story seeds and plot hooks built into the setting, and these are great. And that's all they are. It's a seed for the GM to pick up on,
Right.
and to hopefully grow something more interesting out of it.
It's inspiration.
It's inspiration,
Things that may happen or you may interact with,
interesting
but
premises,
not necessarily. Yes.
to jump off of and give life to them in your own way. And character backstories are also, if you're doing them right, which is not hard, by the way, should
The
be
easiest
providing.
thing possible.
It's really easy. Should be providing additional seeds to the GM.
God,
A
I'd
couple
love if
instances
they.
of this.
I hope they give us an
So
example at
running,
some point.
A little infrequently are
I mean,
cyber
this is
games
just
on this channel.
Black Lodge games in a nutshell. They don't say a whole lot.
Like the procedure for doing this, like if I had a guideline, and I'm not saying that they haven't done this because we're only 8 minutes through the video, but I'm hoping, 9 minutes through the video, I'm hoping that they include I'm hoping that they include some kind of guideline for, okay, here's a backstory that is like not actually a story and is actually just a bunch of prompts for your game master to make use of that you have a little bit of control over. That I think would be pretty cool.
Now I do want to see some examples. Definitely.
Right. Did you catch the note about plot hooks where they said a whole bunch of don't get worried about plot, don't get worried about the term, don't get worried. It's
I mean, what I reacted mostly to is what came after that, where they kind of jabbed at the Broisarian idea of the complete player autonomy and like people bringing in their own factions and etc. into the game
Wasn't
or
okay.
to the table.
I wrote a note about that because he said we're doing fertile soil, or sorry, the characters are supposed to provide these little narratives. They're supposed to provide you with fertile soil on which the GM can run a game, but and NPCs apparently fall under this, but factions, locations, and nations apparently do not fall under this header.
Peculiar indeed.
Well, I don't know why one would be preferable to the other, especially when a pretty common occupation or pretty common use for NPCs is going to be a faction head.
I mean, I'd expect for the the DM or like the DM to want something that you can actually interact with on a larger scale.
They seem to like not be in favor of that, but like all the I don't know, everything it's just weird.
It's almost like they do not have a complete position. I don't know. Let's keep watching.
Already.
The character creation process for Cyberpunk optionally has a life path system, which is awesome. I love life paths. They're super fun.
Traveler gang.
That life path system, basically you roll through, depending on certain roles determining your age and things like that, determines how many kind of life events you're going to be rolling for, over the course of the years between the time you're like 16 or 17 and whenever we're starting the game, your character is starting. So, and you don't always have something happen in a year. Like my character, I think I had like three events.
3
happen.
years,
yeah. 3 major events happened. And the things that come up on that, very basic. They're, there's not a lot of description to it. It's like 1 year my character had a whole bunch of successful flings. Okay, cool. That's a fairly minor detail. Another year I had, I met someone who ended up being like a surrogate father figure. Another year I had someone who ended up as sort of a kind of a sibling figure who's also a rival. And then the last one was that it's like, what's the most important thing in your character's life? Like, what is the most important thing to them? And I rolled up that it was my lover. And so that's 3 NPCs. Those are 3 people that I'm not controlling. But if I simply wrote down the exact things that were on those tables and handed those into you, it would have been boring.
Boring, not evocative.
It would have, like, sure, my character would have had this basic backstory to them, but it wouldn't have made the game any better, So
yeah,
what I did with that was I wrote 2 to 3 sentences about each of those major life events and sent them over to you and gave them, and it was a little more evocative. Like I came up with, if this person this lover of mine is the most important person in my life that I'm like obsessing over, essentially, I had to come up with who that was. And so I came up with a basic description and said that this is someone who is essentially the opposite of him in every way. I'm playing this like corpo hack, who just cares about money and power and ambition. And so this chick is the opposite, who's this like, lefty rocker girl who wants to tear down the system and all of this, but they have this very stupid kind of young love that's very dangerous and can get them both killed. And the other thing I said was that, and she is also a cyberpunk and probably rolling with, Johnny Silverhand types. And so we're probably going to have literally conflicting goals at some points.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That was all I said about that. I had my rival, very brief description. It was someone that I had worked with previously, and we went to different companies, and now we're both trying to kind of sabotage each other. But it's a friendly rivalry. We like getting one over on each other. Again, there's the backstory. And, I give them a name as well. And then the final character has not been introduced in the game yet. I'm actually I don't know how he's going to show up, but that'll be fairly interesting. I don't want to give any details away about that, but there was another character. These gave you a lot of ammunition to continue to flesh out the world and come up with a bunch of interesting shit for us to kind of stumble across in the game. And here's another thing. I sent that to him like, I don't know, 6 hours before the game or something like that. So it's not like
and it still went perfectly from my perspective. You were able to role play your character excellently right from the beginning. And this, what you're talking about, it speaks to one.
I'm gonna pause here for a moment. I feel like it's weird to espouse again. It's weird to espouse the virtues of how much of an impact, a positive impact, this can have on the campaign for the sake of your GM's, not plot, but I guess quest hooks, what they're expecting to, what you can expect to see in the world, and then say, well, I gave it to them 6 hours before the campaign started, and which doesn't seem like a lot of time for it to actually impact the campaign.
Yeah, I don't think they expect all of this backstory to actually impact the what you are actually doing in the campaign or what there is to interact with. Um, they're talking mostly about like role playing, or like immersing in a character, or like having a fleshed out
Right,
character.
specifically first person roleplay,
Uh,
which is fine, I guess.
I mean, it's not what I'm personally here for.
Yeah, not what most of us are here for, actually. It's just I feel like I'm gonna make a prediction now. I feel like this is a really big screed to defend or justify a position that nobody really probably has much of an issue with, which is they really like playing in character in first person. They're a huge fan of that. And they just don't want anybody to make fun of them for doing so. So they're going to take pot
Yeah,
shots at a lot of other stuff in the process.
that's the Umbransky school in a nutshell.
All right.
Biggest pitfalls about like backstories. One is you're writing an actual story, a short story, a novel, and the second is when most people sit down to write a backstory. I'm going to think about my character. They're just listing off the rote chronological information that happens to their character, and that's it. A lot of times it's okay. Well, I'm a fighter. I'm a level 1 fighter in the Forgotten Realms. What is the path of least resistance to justify my being in the current circumstances, whatever they might be, or worse? I'm, like you alluded to, I'm writing myself as the chosen one. I am destined for +5 Vorpal sword.
Yep.
I'm the heir. I'm the the lost heir to the throne. Not that I might be, or I think that I am that.
Yeah.
That's completely wrong. What you want for a backstory is, like you said, primarily a series of story hooks of events and opinions, situations, opinions, characters that your character has interacted with.
Yeah.
Right. That matter to the character, or they matter in the broader milieu of whatever world that
Yes.
we're in. If you in any setting, if you witnessed.
I'm going to pause it here. One of the guy on the right mentioned, I don't know either of these people's names, but the guy on the right mentioned that the wrong way to set a backstory was to do something like, say, I am destined for a +5 Vorpal sword, or I am the heir to a kingdom that I'm trying to retake, and then proceeded to say, what you want to do for a backstory is take things which are story hooks for the GM that matter to the character, that you could find in game, that you could adventure about. But my question is, why wouldn't being the heir to a kingdom fit that description?
I don't know. They are having a hard time deciding between if they want something bare bones or something you can actually do something with.
Because they give you an example, they say this one thing is bad, but then proceed to describe all of the qualities a good plot hook or story hook would have, which that it's flashy. There are promises of rewards and heroism along the way. There's a major final goal that the player has to look forward to and be excited about throughout the campaign.
True.
It's like
I mean, Armored in chat is completely right.
those aren't the hooks he likes.
Yeah. Exactly.
Joe, you are absolutely correct. Armored Alcatraz says because those aren't the hooks he likes. He's fine with hooks which is so strange because have you ever seen Matt Colville's video on the sandbox versus the railroad?
Uh, that must have been a really long time ago.
It was a really long time ago. It's where he retells the story of The Hobbit as a D&D campaign, and then retells the story of of the Lord of the Rings as a D&D campaign. And he describes the first one as being this open world that the DM wasn't prepared. I'm disconnected. There we go. I think I'm reconnected. I don't know where I disconnected there.
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
You're cutting out.
There we go. My internet cut out for just a second, it looks like. I was saying he weaves together this narrative of the players who are about to play through the story of The Hobbit getting together, deciding they're all dwarves, and that one of them is the lost acted again. You gotta be kidding me. Hold on a second. I had to disconnect the can you hear me again?
Everyone's here.
Okay, just give
Hello?
me. Can you hear me? I suspect it
Could you-
has something to do with this.
Could we set up a watch together instead, so that you don't have to stream your screen twice?
Yeah, that's probably fine. YouTube. Oh, you know what? I don't think that would work because then they wouldn't be synced. Apologies for the technical difficulties, folks.
It wouldn't.
No, I don't think they would because I'd have to start and stop each one.
Well, no. Just go and watch together.
Oh, this one. Okay.
You have the timestamp, right?
I sure do. Just give me the here, I'll send it to you. Start at 1444.
Oh, you mean like that? We're just gonna watch it at the same time.
No, I'm getting the
Ah, well, send me an invite then. Or are you in the? We're not in the same party.
yeah, because the one that you had it didn't let me in.
Ah, I see.
It's telling me there's an invalid access code.
Welcome back to the Black Lodge Games.
Okay, so if I go in
Played
here,
in have all had a lot of input from the players at the get.
Or worse,
no, it is Spectrum once again, just screwing with me. Actually, you know what? It looks like it calmed down. It's probably just one of the temporary. It's probably just Spectrum just being it. You know what? For a moment. So I'm gonna go right here. Go live.
Hi.
We're back.
There we go.
We're back. All right, where were we? And this time I could see my mouse again, which was weird.
of story hooks, of events and opinions, situations, opinions, characters that your character has interacted with.
Yeah.
Right? That matter to the character, or they matter in the broader milieu of whatever world that
Yes.
we're in. You know, if you in any setting, if you witnessed a black mass human sacrifice,
Right.
regardless of whatever the situation was that caused you to witness this, that is a tremendous event. You don't have a blasé opinion about that.
Right.
That shapes you dramatically.
Yeah.
Dramatically.
And this
And so you want Go ahead.
I was gonna say this example that you're bringing up in particular. I was reading the Invisible College, which prior to this call I mistakenly referred to as the Autistic College. Uh,
Not inaccurate.
yeah, but there I was reading the character creation rules, and there's a table, or I think there's two tables that you can roll on for backstory events. And it's not a life path. It's basically like, how did your character come to know about the Invisible College, and how did you join?
It was getting worse.
They're very small, but one of them was something like you witnessed a human sacrifice, or these are like major things. You're awakening to the existence of the
I
supernatural.
don't think.
I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit here, but
Yeah, they're just talking about RPG pundit systems. That, I mean, yeah, they have backgrounds, but from what I remember, none of them give you any gameable hooks.
which is ironic because stuff like, I mean, when I look at my 5th edition games, like right now I'm running Chilmus Valley. Chilmus Valley is like a 5.5 that I created just so I could, my last send off to 5th edition and WotC D&D. So I could rid myself of it forever, but ensure that, like, realistically speaking, if I ever did have to come back to it, I would have something that I could, throw in front of the DM and say, here's a 5th edition that I would be able to tolerate playing in. And one of the things that came up was backgrounds. We didn't add any backgrounds to the game, but we found that the game mechanics that we were making use of, exploration, travel, negotiations, and downtime activities, were coming up in the game where people would be like, well, I'm a bounty hunter. I'm trying to search for this guy during downtime. Do I get a bonus for it? And all of a sudden, this person's background, and if they wanted to justify being in a specific, like having a specific like backstory to them, or really just a specific event that they could take advantage of, made a lot of sense in the context of the game, because it let us hammer out specific details that they would be able to take advantage of, and like certain limiters on the character, because like they were going to get a special benefit. Here's the juice, folks. These characters were going to get a special benefit on account of their background choice. And setting up a backstory let us set up additional guarantees and limiters on when they were going to be able to take advantage of those automatic successes. And that seemed fine. But again, that was something that we did in play. It wasn't like before the game started. That goes back to what we talked about at the very beginning of the game, where the possibility was left open, and the right moment came up in game to make use of it. I don't know how to categorize that, but it seems distinct from, I invented something at the beginning of the game that you should permit me to do, and I should get to take advantage of. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, you would get this eventually if you play without backgrounds, seeing that players will usually lean into these roles or archetypes that you over time they would develop not excuses but means to get these bonuses, right?
Yeah. Yeah, like, could I say that I was a bounty, or I am somebody who hunts people, or I'd like to hire a bunch of spies? Well, at that point, you're sort of basically a bounty hunter, or somebody running a guild. And I might ask you the question, do you want this to be a bunch of bounty hunters? Do you want them to be a bunch of thieves? Do you want them to be a bunch of spies? What sort of, if you're going to head an organization like this, what's the theme of the organization, so I know what you're... Because we can't over-categorize it for the purpose of mechanics, because that would be a huge, probably waste of time on my end. But I can say the events, the natural events that are just going to happen throughout the course of the campaign, I can say that some of them are going to filter towards you or come to you a little bit more easily, or you might get advance notice of them depending on your choice. Keep in mind, I'm Mr. New School, right? A lot of times I do like this stuff being codified. I do like having this in front of me. I like I loved Strongholds and Followers. I liked Kingdoms and Warfare. So this isn't like out of the ordinary for me, but I'm okay with you having things that you've done and liked. The issue I'm having with these guys is the contradiction, where they list out the things that people typically complain about as far as story hooks go, and then they go on to describe exactly that.
I don't think they are. I mean, they aren't really arguing from any specific position other than this is what I like, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Like they said, oh, the OSR is so bad with this one specific thing. As an excuse, I am admittedly guilty of this, as an excuse to talk about something that they liked doing. I wonder if I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. Let's see if they loop back around to it.
Wait.
You know,
They said that the OSR specifically does this stuff badly, but then go and say that an OSR product does it well. I don't know.
Oh, weird.
Amount of time into this because
A
your
life
character
path
might die.
is just a it's taking the backstory process and weaving it into the rules or into the book.
Yeah.
You should use a life path as like an inspiration.
Right.
If you don't, you're not playing a game that has these things like D&D. A life path system like Cyberpunk is a great source of inspiration to get you thinking in the way that we're talking about here.
And this is the really kind of important thing is it's good for creating seeds for the GM, for hooks for the GM to grab on and expand in the beginning of the game. This is not stuff that, needs to be brought into the game 20 sessions in, because you're not going to care about this stuff by that point anyway. Mm-hmm. It might still have some effect, if maybe an NPC described in your background ends up becoming a major part of the game. That's entirely possible. But it's really more about giving yourself a sense of who the person is just at the very outset. And this
is so confusing to me. What's the point of putting those NPCs in the game then? Just have more people to roleplay with? Like, okay, so we have, I'm starting to get a picture. They have not done this for me, but I am starting to get a picture of the kinds of story hooks and plot hooks that they like, but they seem to be a very niche, narrow, and dare I say, pointless class of NPCs and story hooks that, that they've just said aren't going to matter well into the game. Once you're well into the game, they're not going to have an impact on the character. But okay, so the NPCs, they're not going to be important. They're not important. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna take these notes on Google Docs.
It's immersive, bro.
Okay, so we have they can't be important. Can't be important except by accident well into the game. They can have an initial impact on the game. They can serve as fodder for the GM to roleplay in starting sessions, but not so much as to provide, because remember, they poked fun at the BroSR. They can't be faction heads, but not so much as to provide world movers and shakers. I believe I've discovered who fits this bill. They've described a barkeep. So as opposed to having your own barkeep, which you create as a GM, because why would you not do that? You could have the players invent a story for them, which invents a hook between them and the barkeep. Instead of having a regular barkeep, you can have Uncle Barkeep. I'm not finding myself impressed. Maybe I'm spoiled because of the whole Bro SR thing and the idea of like creating factions that and patrons that the people can take advantage of. But I'm not feeling impressed by this. How do you? What's your sense of this right now?
No, I'm not impressed at all. I want to hear. Ah, I don't think they have anything in favor of more in favor of it to say. Like,
I tell you what, we're gonna
why is
skip
the
around a whole bunch.
why is the OSR specifically getting this wrong? Why is their approach?
Because it's not just the OSR, it's also the new schoolers, apparently, who are writing things about how they're a secret prince who's attempting to reclaim their lost throne. That is also bad.
I mean, like first session, my character ends up being not radically different than I had conceived of him beforehand, but it was I had this notion of him being like really deadly serious, and he can be. There's been a couple moments here and there where he has had to be that way, but the just the way that the game played and how I was interacting with the other characters and what they were doing, like when Omen went up and started rocking out on stage at the club, like
Yeah.
I was like enjoying that. My character was also blasted on all sorts of drugs and alcohol.
Right.
So
Yep.
but I found that like I imagined him being much more cold and calculating, and he ended up being a lot more emotional, like
Right.
way more emotional than I would have anticipated, and that was a lot of fun. And yeah, you are going to discover who this character is, and who this character is going to develop over time as you play.
Yes.
You should expect that, but that doesn't mean that you come into the game with some complete tabula rasa, blank slate, nothing
Right.
there. You have just spawned into
You
the world
spawned in.
as like a video game
Yeah.
character. It's ridiculous to think that.
That's dog shit.
Yeah, it is.
Roleplay.
It is
That's a lack
dog
of
shit.
roleplay.
It is. Yeah, it's not role playing. It's not role playing.
It's not roleplay. It's the
and-
absence of roleplay.
Right, and maybe you don't like role playing.
I mean, if we're just talking like D&D, the backgrounds for all of the classes are implied. Like they're not non-existent.
Okay, so not role playing before the first session starts is bad role play. Problem is, we have our counterclaim. We have our counterclaim, which is you've just stated that the even the D&D classes, like even from first edition AD&D, all have like implied backgrounds to them.
Yeah, it's not like you just spawn in. Like, if we're using the fighter as an example, it's heavily implied that you've been doing military service and probably that you have contacts, at least some contacts within that field. At least enough to find a like a cell sword.
Your first level fighter in AD&D is a veteran and can command 10 men at arms. Based off like both the chainmail rules and I guess the level titles. Yeah, you're a veteran. You can control 10 men at arms. Let's see here. The wizard. Maybe this one is off, but the wizard ostensibly has a master that they were apprenticing to at some point. The cleric has a god. Ostensibly a holy order. What do we have? The thief. There's thief and assassin. I don't know what we would put under those.
The assassin is like is supposed to be a member of an assassin's guild, right?
I think he's supposed to be a member of a guild. Yeah. I think it might be the same
Yeah.
for the thief as well. Or at the very least, they have some piety to whoever the local thieves guild is. Assuming you're starting in like any kind of civilized area. Okay, so apparently the fighter starts with someone able to act as a sergeant at first level. I guess Paladin, it also has like a holy order. What else would it... I guess the point is... Oh, one final thing. These guys all have restrictions to some extent or another on what kind of character they're playing. Like, Rangers... Rangers can't adventure with one another. There's a limit to the maximum number of Rangers that can adventure with one another. I think it's like 3. Druids sacrifice people? They're in circles. They're just like head druids that other people have to beat in order to advance in the rank. Yeah, this is... So what you've said, I think, is exactly right. Is we have a pretty clear sense of what we would call probably implied setting to take advantage of here, when we're assuming like if the fighter already starts out as a veteran at like 19 to 23 years old, I feel like you already have plenty to work with there. Maybe I'm crazy.
No, you can easily derive a lot of hooks from these simple premises that are the D&D classes.
Like the fighter was a drummer boy at age 9, and he went here, here, and here, and you know people from here, here, and here. And if you spend any of your starting gold on hirelings or men-at-arms, I'm gonna say that they were attached to your military company.
Yeah,
or you
that is exactly what I do for the fighter.
Perfect. And if you as the player did that, I don't think that anybody in the OSR actually has really an issue with that.
No.
So what the hell are these
Meta,
guys
though.
talking about then?
I mean, they are not gamers.
Yeah,
Blacklight.
they're literally no games.
Yes.
The claim is the OSR is autistic about backstories. And then we have the OSR is autistic about backstories, but you can't invent a character off the mechanics alone. You have to roleplay before you actually get into the game. Like before the first session. Otherwise, you're engaged in bad roleplay. I'm
I
gonna
don't really understand who this video is directed towards.
I don't think it's directed towards. It's directed towards Casimir Urbanski. He is, I think, adopted these poor fatherless individuals. You thought the Broasar was fatherless. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a new adoptive dad that has entered the arena, and it's awful. It's the opposite of the National Geographic meme. I'm gonna let these guys play out a little bit more, and then we're gonna skip around.
That would be
Again.
trash, in my opinion. Role-playing is
That'll be
awesome.
trash.
Yeah.
Yes,
Role-playing is the best
you
part
are
of
wrong,
these
and your games are terrible.
Yeah, exactly.
To your
Oh, holy crap! Okay, I hate to pause it again. Were you in chat earlier today when EUTB was explaining? Was explaining the roleplay conflict, the story gamer conflict.
No.
Particulars. Oh God. Okay. Because I'm having an epiphany. Because I'm pretty sure both he and Particularist explain these guys in like perfect detail, almost 1-to-1, and like this guy almost verbatim said what Particularist said. which is they come into the game and conclude that it's terrible. Right? Like they conclude that all the mechanics are bad. Like all the gaming is bad. And as a result, they conclude that the roleplay must be why everybody is here.
You are wrong, and your games are terrible.
Yeah, exactly.
And he just said like 5 seconds ago.
Role playing.
It's not roleplay. It's the absence of roleplay.
Right.
Here it is.
And maybe you don't like role playing. That would be trash, in my opinion. Role playing is
That would be trash.
Yeah.
Yes.
Role playing is the best
You
part
are
of
wrong,
these
and
games.
your games are terrible.
Role playing is the best part of this game. Which is it's remember, these people have a very specific definition of roleplay, which is an activity separate from the mechanics. Because this guy, and this guy as well, they don't believe in reaction rolls. They don't believe in gold as XP.
Oh, that's right. Oh.
They don't believe in dungeons. Dungeons do not make sense to them.
I mean, if the game gets in the way of role playing, why are you playing a game in the first place? You could just freeform role play. Why are they here?
Because they need to be part of the hobby.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think they admitted at least somewhat to being grifters. Like they entered the OSR because they can sell products.
You'll probably see a product for I don't know, Cyberpunk Red or something like that in the next couple of months for these guys. Maybe a Lion and Dragon supplement that was produced or special consulting from the creator, Casimir Urbanski, the tutorial boss of Internet Shitlords. It just never gets old. I'm calling him that for 4 years. It just never gets old. Alright, so let's let these guys on, because, I'm going to continue skipping through, and there's a point about roleplay that John Mollison got to that we'll go through and explain as we circle back around to Twitter. Because these guys consider it a separate activity from the mechanics, partially because they hate the mechanics. But let's see what they got.
Exactly.
To your point, like any character, the idea that you have, the backstory, whether it's a good backstory, bad backstory, nothing is going to survive, confrontation with the actual session, with actual play.
Yep.
But what a good backstory is, what it should provide, in part, it should list the events, the people, the circumstances your character has experienced, which are relevant and meaningful to them, positive or negative. And those are things which you can anchor back on. Those things, I love this other character, your character's lover. Now, maybe in the course of play, that's going to change through roleplay. Maybe there's a huge explosive breakup as young love.
Right.
Can
Not only can you flirt with your best friend in game, and that's cool, and the OSR is bad for doing it, you could also break up with your best friend in game.
I mean, how does this add to the game? Come on.
I'll tell you how! It's Pride Month!
Oh.
This is a very progressive chat. I'm a very progressive person. I'm going to completely switch my tone on this. I think it's great that these guys get to express their feelings to one another in game. And also their occasional frustrations. I think simulated breakups are a great way of getting around other issues that a couple might run into. Right? You just kind of like calm down, take a step back, check with each other if there was any bleed, reset. In the game about dwarves attempting to recover some Castle Vale that they lost to some goblins along the road, but no, I am now officially endorsing this.
can tend to be, but that is something right now that matters to the character. Even if the character himself won't admit it, Matt, the player, knows this matters to the character.
Right.
That gives you a source of solid footing to roleplay the character. That's what a backstory should be. From a player perspective, they are story hooks that give you insight into the character's behavior and the character's inner life, so that you know what their personality is, how they feel, broadly speaking, such that you can actually
broadly
roleplay.
speaking.
Broadly speaking, you don't know the whole thing. And from a GM, like you alluded to, because I, the GM, know that these events are things which matter to your character, have shaped your character, and they are hopefully evocative, interesting. Those are things which may arise and may take place in the course of play that I know are going to be relevant and resonant.
Yeah, and some of them may not. It's like
Some of them may
generally
not.
when I run a game, it's like maybe one or two details from someone's backstory become like some sort of an active focus for any period of time. But the thing is, the rest of the game is going to consume their attention, and they're not going to be sitting there going like, "Well, what about the thing that I wrote down?" That's not how it goes.
You're not supposed to 100% your backstory.
Yeah.
Yeah. Achievement not unlocked.
Yeah,
You're doing
backstory
it wrong.
completionists.
Yeah. And so a lot of times, like we're coming back again to the life path system. The life path system is a really great example of at least thematically what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It's not overly burdensome.
Thematically,
It's not 12 pages.
but
It's
not mechanically is the problem.
poor.
And I've just been writing some notes here because what came to mind for me when I hear life path system is Traveler, and Lords of Brachus, the RPG, now cart-based RPG I've been working for ages now, included a life path system that was partially based on this. And the issue with their description at this point, unfortunately, is that, like, none of it matches up. What they talked about earlier was, like, you can't invent a character off the mechanics alone, you have to roleplay before the first session, but the backstory can't be overly important well into the game. It can have an initial impact on the game, but besides that, it's just supposed to give you, like, a little bit... It's supposed to prevent a failure to launch, but otherwise not supposed to have an impact on the game. But the problem is, if you roll specific events in your Traveler, like, for instance, Traveler, life path system, that's going to determine, in a lot of cases, the course of the campaign. If somebody gets majority shares in a ship, that's gonna change the game. Somebody who who is relying on life extending drugs or has medical debt, is relying on prosthetics and stuff like that. Like that's really important. Not just to your character's internal state of mind, but specifically not just the way that they interact with the world, but specifically the way that the world interacts with them. Does that make sense? Tell me if I'm crazy.
No, not at all.
Because I've been thinking for a really long time about if they tried. I don't think they can, but if they tried to write up some kind of dividing line that you could adhere to when it comes to how roleplay is supposed to impact your character and how you should write up a backstory. This is a good backstory. This is a bad backstory. I think they might say that a good backstory only impacts how your character interacts with the world. It does not impact how the world interacts with your character. But the problem with that, I think, is that it contradicts a lot of the benefits that they've listed the character backstories.
I mean, it's non-interactive what they are describing, right? It's not worth having in the game at all.
Because it's like because they're not supposed to, like, it's good. They keep describing, like, you could have new NPCs for the GM to invent, or for the GM to make use of, but those NPCs aren't allowed to become important in the game, or they're not supposed to become important in the game, right? Except by accident, maybe. They're not, like, they can't be predestined for it. But the problem is, at that point, why not just invent your own barkeep? I'm really not getting this. So, like, if we're asking, what do you think, okay, if these guys were requesting backstories of their players, what do you think some of the questions would be? or prompts would be.
Ooh.
I have one. And you know what? I'm going to start off, and hopefully this gives you... I'm going to stall for you. I think question number 1, and there might be just like less than 5 that they're going to ask, but question number 1 is, name a figure in town who is not a member of, what'd you say, nobility, to whom you are related.
Man.
So I'm trying to
Like,
keep it within their constraints.
I cannot come up with anything. This is like the mental gymnastics you had to do to come up with something that does not affect the gameplay or in any way mechanically, but is supposedly gonna change the way your character sees the world. I don't know. It's
I feel dizzy.
story gaming.
No, it really is story gaming. Name a figure in town who is not a member of nobility to whom you are related. So everybody's gonna answer the barkeep. All of their uncles run the local bar. And that's how they know each other. Goodness. Name a personal event from your childhood you would like your character to share. From your childhood, or which you fantasized about you would like your character to share. This is tough. My target number is 5. Oh, here's damn. I don't think this one works either. I was about to say, like, name an event that happened on another continent that doesn't impact this one, but that your player was present for. Oh, here we go. Name an event from another continent that your character heard about, but never witnessed. Describe how your character feels about this. Alright, I got number 5. Describe your character's place. Yeah, describe your character's place in the 5-man band trope. Are you the heart? Are you the big guy? Are you the lancer? Are you the leader? And really, this last one, I think, provides all of the possible benefits that you could imagine from the entirety of this discussion so far, is what is their place in the 5-man band trope? Because I can't see how any of this other stuff is fertile soil for the GM in any capacity.
Oh no.
Like, okay, so I'm gonna go over to I'm gonna go over to a rules document that I was making for Patreon. One of the rules documents I was writing up for Lords of Brachus was generating patron characters. Now, these guys over here, they don't like patron characters. But I started... Let's see. Yeah, I started off by saying certain things, just like bog standard stuff for, like, creating factions and creating faction heads and stuff like that. Patron limits their cost. I had notes about patron relationships, like patrons start out with up to 1 alliance and at least 2 hostilities with other patron level entities, at least one of which must be another patron. You cannot maintain a meaningful campaign if strict restrictions on patron relationships are not kept. And just started getting off on just the process of generating these. And I feel like if you just had each player generate an NPC that they knew about or heard of, and then maybe interacted with once, I feel like you could get a lot of the value that these guys are talking about. But again, that would still permit, like, that would meet all the qualifications for why these guys say backstory is valuable, but it would still permit somebody to come up with the idea of, I am a secret, long lost heir to the throne, and I would like to get it back. And that's my character's motivation. Fuck. Sorry for talking so much, by the way.
Oh, no.
Hmm.
I'm enjoying this.
These guys just drive me up the wall. I would love to sit down with them. I actually feel I could. Well, I'll save that for the end. But I feel like I could.
Oh, there's more spicy stuff coming?
Absolutely. Well, at the end, we're gonna go back to, like I said, we're circling back to some Twitter drama.
Ooh.
I got a special request.
You know, when you gave me the backstory, it wasn't a list of bullet points per se, but they were points. They were moments and situations that were meaningful to the character that I could hone in on, I could get excited for.
Earlier, this guy criticized the concept of just listing chronological events that happened to your character. Just going to make a quick call back to the thing that they love doing this, where they just kind of, I feel like they're flipping back and forth between stuff that they like and stuff that they know they have to say to kind of stay in the OSR circles, or claim that they're like somewhere in the ballpark.
It's just a matter of fact. I'm going to get additional ideas, inspiration. I'm going to be more excited, and the same is going to be true for you. As we're talking this through, the character's going to become more real. Far more real than if you typed out a 10-page backstory, or even just a bullet point list of these plot points or story hooks and just gave it to me.
Yeah, and I didn't write it as a story either.
Right.
Like, I literally gave you, like I said, like maybe 3 very short paragraphs, like 2-3 sentence paragraphs.
And that was sufficient.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's just such a huge chasm between the way that we play games. And a lot of the OSR people seem to, at least they seem.
Well, here's the start of that chasm, is that you guys don't play games. And some of us do.
I mean, it's really funny hearing these guys parrot pundit.
It's.
I mean,
like, what is their grift here?
it's a mystery.
Dude, what do you think Pundit sees in these guys?
I don't know. They are OSR neophytes. I think RPG Pundit has in quotation marks adopted a lot of different newcomers to the
Is he a
OSR that
groomer?
make YouTube channels, like the Basic Expert, even Aaron in the beginning, right?
Yeah, he did.
Because even I was part in the beginning. Even I was part of the immersionist school play.
I feel like a lot of people were, but we had that. I mean, we had the big fight. We were right around the time that the BroSR came onto the scene, and people finally stopped, at least for the most part, arguing about whether or not we could discuss whether there was a right way to play. We just kind of skipped to the stage where we would say, no, there is a right way to play, and this is why I think this one is, and this is why this other guy thinks this one is.
Source of constant agony.
Yeah, exactly. The way that they describe the way that they play, it seems like there's almost no role play in those games. And the reason that I know that that's basically the case is that I've seen some of their games online.
Right.
And there's no roleplay. Shauner,
Universally
I've seen them vicariously through Shauner seeing them.
Right. Roll for Sanity is a huge public service to the RPG community.
Wait,
And
do
it's
these
true.
guys
Well,
appear on Legion of Myth streams?
You know what? I've never watched Legion of Myth.
They are. I mean, a lot of their talking points are kind of similar. Now that I think of it, it's funny that they mentioned this Shauner guy because he's quite the story gamer. Or like,
Who is that guy?
yeah,
Oh, he's live now.
Oh. Let me check because I would expect them actually to be on here.
Like they talk about Palladium a little bit.
Victor from the Basic Expert streams is on there.
I know that. Let's see here. Oh, hey, Purple Druid. Hey, buddy. And hello to Augment as well. I never said hi. What do you? What does the chat think so far? Is anybody? Here's my question to the chat: is anybody closer at all to knowing exactly what these guys are talking about? And barring that, does anybody have an inkling of what these guys are actually talking about? Like what their actual what they're in favor of, and the supposed issue that they have. I got nothing. Anybody in chat? Is anybody able to rescue us from this? Let's see here. Up, 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 up. Hey, okay, so bunch of comments. Six of Swords says. So Agma says no. Six of Swords says, I'm further away from understanding their thesis statement than when we started this. That sounds about right. Not John Docker says, all I know about these guys is they should not be allowed within 200 yards of us. I can't say that. Let's see here. These guys are on a different operating system. They don't seem to be open to research or to learn. And yeah, a lot of cognitive dissonance here. Okay. I guess, alright, so when I hear incomprehensible in Aaron's server, which I guess I've joined voice nowadays, but I'm not really going back on there for text, but except when I'm script farming. But let's see here. I don't think the next time I hear the phrase incomprehensible, I think I'm just gonna picture these two guys, and I have a new like litmus test or bar. Or am I communicating my points more clearly than these people? And if so, I'm probably fine.
everything, all that you're seeing are people talking out of character. They're strategizing. Do I go down the left path? Do I go down the right path?
Like that.
Do you check for traps?
Yeah, like arguing over, how many feet they're moving, and I guess that's important in some cases, but it's just that is such an uninteresting thing to do, in my opinion. I could not give a single fuck about any of that.
Did you say
Like,
something?
the game sucks.
Yeah.
But oh God.
A little bit weird. I never got to flirt with the barmaid. This is an awful game.
Like, I want to, actually play a character in a world and interact with other characters.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what this is for.
Yeah.
There's no reason to have a backstory if you are just spawning in. If you were...
I briefly disconnected. Looks like we're good, though.
Have done a huge service, although it would have... the hobby still would have been, I think, terrible in their absence. But unfortunately, because it's doubled down, it's made it easier, more digestible. These like bad examples of what a character is.
Right.
I'm just a level 1 Forsaken warlock.
Or thinking that like, oh, I rolled up low charisma. You know, I'm a charisma 6 character. Like,
right.
People with a charisma of 6, any given set of charisma 6 characters are going to be different.
Yeah, and you as a...
I don't actually believe that. I think that people who are terrible at doing things are generally speaking quite similar. I have 2 examples right in front of me where they've more or less been saying the same thing. It's too easy.
Almost made me spit out my drink.
These 2 are virtually identical. I think of these 2 people as being, well, maybe not, it might not be charisma 6, it might be intelligence 6, but that aside, without speculating too much.
Yeah.
They're both...
These guys are not rolling for psionics, that's for sure.
Absolutely not. They got a 101% chance to not have it. Oh, goodness. I don't want the, Ryan James says, the guy on the left wants his character to have an NPC lover from his backstory. I don't mind if that's the case. I don't mind if you come up with that. I just object to the idea that I'm bad at roleplay, or I hate roleplay, or I'm somehow not playing the game right if I don't desire that very specific thing. Because I think it provides very marginal, in comparison to things like one-to-one time or patrons, which is a actual roleplay centric or faction centric or game and simultaneously game centric mechanic. I think that the benefits of that are huge compared to the very marginal benefits of inventing an NPC lover from your backstory. And to be fair, I don't think that they're necessarily claiming otherwise, because from what I've gathered, from what I've been able to extrapolate from their conversation so far, I really do think that they're just talking about additional fuel for the GM to not cancel their game after 2 sessions. Which, you know what? There's a lot of people, we come from the Aaron the Pedantic server, there's a lot of people who run 1 or 2 games and then stop. Adlin, if you're listening to this, you gotta run Castle Centillion again, okay? You cannot give up. I know you missed North Texas RPG Con. There's a way to make up for it. You have to run your 3rd session. But I'm not sure if that really would have helped.
Person, obviously you don't know what your numerical value is, but you have a low charisma. You are not likable. You're not the life and soul of the party, but maybe you think that you are. And that's why everybody is irritated by you.
Really finds you irritating, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you just don't talk when any conversation happens.
Right.
That's insane. That's not how a person acts.
Or that you're just ugly, you know. It's not...
Or that you're just ugly.
That's actually how quite a few people act. I don't know if you know about these people called introverts. But they exist all over the place. People with low charisma are not exclusively folks who think they are the face of, for say, a party or a movement or a new ideological discovery that everybody needs to quickly, that is something new that everybody needs to hop on the bandwagon on, or else they're going to miss out on it. But again, I'm looking at 2 examples right in front of me, so it was a good example. I just wish they hadn't typecast themselves.
There's just so much more to all of this, and
right.
Your game will be better if you actually roleplay. And I understand, like, if again, we've said this many times. If you just view this as simply a game, like a means of socializing or whatever, or like I only literally want to simulate killing orcs in a dungeon, sure, I guess that's fine, but that's not what we do, and I think that is, again,
it's not fine.
It's not fine.
We have no apologies, no content. That is not fine. That's absolutely fucking terrible. That's not what the hobby is for.
Yeah.
That's not what role-playing is.
It's funny you should mention that, because if you go into a dungeon and there's a bunch of orcs there, there's this really neat mechanic called reaction rolls. And if you use... What reaction rolls do is, this is gonna blow your socks off, alright? What reaction rolls do is they actually prompt your game master to invent a specific social excuses, dialogue, attitudes, and tones for a new group of creatures that the players come across, and many of them are friendly, such that even if you go into an explicitly hostile environment, such as a dungeon, your GM might be surprised and might have to improvise and might have to provide an excuse for a friendly reaction from orcs to your party. I'm trying to avoid something I did with Aaron on the last stream here, but I'm going to make one exception because I think you're going to get the right answer to this. How would you describe what tabletop term would we use to describe a bunch of orcs negotiating a friendly interaction with the party?
Huh?
Okay, so what would we use? What tabletop term would we use to describe a bunch of orcs negotiating a friendly interaction with the party? They're in a dungeon. Interactions.
Interactivity. I don't know.
Roleplay. I would.
I'm retarded.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I hate doing that because I need to get around. Sometimes when I'm reacting to people, I have like this mindset where I'm inventing, or I'll ask the chat. Basically, I'll have an interaction with chat where I say, "All right, chat, what do we call this, this, this?" And there's enough people in chat that they could just spit out words, a lot of which are going to be pretty much good enough, but they're not going to be the exact same word that I'm looking for. When I do that with somebody who's on stream with me, it's bad because they can't literally read my mind.
Yo, Aaron.
Aaron! Hello! My party calls it 5 minutes before we betray them. That's one thing. Aaron, if you want to join in, just hop into my server. I'll pop the, I'll bring you up to, whatchamacallit, the stream recording channel. But yeah, so like, these guys don't use the mechanics that we love and advocate for that regularly produce roleplay, which is why they have to move to these stupid, weird, alchemical, like a Dunning-Kruger. God, I'm just struggling because I'm like, just because I said I was going to be less charitable this year doesn't mean I have to be like explicitly rude to everybody. But what the hell?
It's bad. The game is bad, and you should change the way you're doing it, or you should just play a board game or a video game.
Yeah.
You're doing yourself a tremendous disservice.
Right. There's just that to me is the lowest form of the experience in these games.
Yeah.
Like, and this is, of course, everyone is going to be accusing us of being story gamers and theater, narrativist improvisers,
Right.
and blah blah blah. Well, guess what? Even if you're playing the shitty board game version of this, you're just improvising the entire time. The entire time you're improvising. You're just improvising poorly.
Yeah, and like this insane dichotomy, this all or nothing dichotomy between story and no story, or story and gameplay. I'm not even sure what exactly the disconnect is, or where the barrier is.
I think
probably different for every.
The disconnect is probably a product of the fact that a lot of these guys, and we've all been there, you've been in some railroaded game, and that just blows.
Mhm.
Like, it's not fun. If your character doesn't have agency, then why are you playing the game? It's not, like, I get that. Like, I get the aversion to that and the hatred of that experience because it's justified. Yeah, it is completely
That is
justified.
also bad.
Right, but that doesn't mean that having playing characters, like actually role-playing out situations and being interested in the motivations of the NPCs and antagonists and all this, and wanting to essentially have some sort of a goal that is not simply delving into a dungeon, but could be, a political goal or a personal vendetta that you want to see through. Like, the aversion to that as like, oh, well, that's a railroaded story game. It's just like, you are psychotic.
No. You're out.
Have you heard anybody say this?
No.
I've never heard anybody say this or anything like this. And I'm in the OSR Taliban. God, this is so goofy.
Out of your fucking mind.
even if the game is, at least at the beginning, or hell, even if that is most of what the game is, dungeon delving, why in God's name are you doing that? Why? Why would any sane person do that in a fantasy world or in any other kind of world? Why are you putting yourself in horrific danger? If it's a fantasy world, you're risking more than just death. You're possibly risking your soul
Yeah.
and all.
Okay, I understand why a person who
Bro.
looks like this would not be particularly invested in heroism. All right?
Yeah.
As somebody who's done a little bit of IRL adventuring, and not even anything that had to do with violence, okay? Just going up the wrong side of Mount Kineo. And climbing where I really wasn't supposed to be, as somebody with no real experience with rock climbing, okay? It was fun. I enjoyed all the bumps and scrapes that I got on the way down.
Yeah,
But
it's thrilling.
I walked up,
do not
I
expect
walked,
this guy to be able to sympathize in any way.
probably not. I walked up Mount Katahdin with a terrible, horrific fear of heights.
Oh,
It is the highest I have ever been while not in an airplane. I think it's the tallest mountain on the East Coast. I think it's the end of the Appalachian Trail, if I'm correct. My memory, it was some years ago. I think it was literally 10 years ago now. I was 16. And I remember being so happy that day because it was overcast, which meant I couldn't actually see the mountaintop view. I didn't have the mountaintop view. I was embraced by a cloud. And I went up to the top, I sat at the peak next to a sign, and I ate my peanut butter, and then I started walking back down, and I was just shrouded in mist going down this trail, and walked out of a cloud to look at the beautiful landscape of Maine in front of me. And it was awesome. It was amazing. We have adrenaline junkies everywhere who do things for no reason, for no reward, who actually spend a shit ton of money to go risk life and limb. You're telling me that there's gold? If you're telling me that there's gold at the top of that mountain, absolutely some people are going to go up there. People have been doing it forever. Soldiers of Fortune, and this is the thing. This is the problem. This is why these guys can't actually connect with what the OSR considers story, like a history, a recounting of events that happened throughout a campaign, is because this guy can't sympathize with any of the motivations that testosterone generally provides you with.
and I hope Aaron can get these guys on stream.
It'd be hysterical. You know what he should do? He should tag me in. Just midway through.
Yes.
Just play BFG division. All the halfway through and then invite me to the stream. No, that'll be fun. It's these guys have no. So when we talk about story and roleplay and the excitement that we feel, pretending to be a bunch of dwarves with balls made of literal stone, running through, kicking down a doorway, killing some orcs, and congratulating each other on how we've just all the beer we're gonna be able to buy, and all the giant cart that the giant wagon that we're gonna be able to build for all the dead elves that we're gonna be carting from town to town. They can't sympathize because he's lacking testosterone. He hasn't been to the gym. This is why the BroSR demands that you go to the gym, because otherwise you're just not going to be on the same intellectual level as everybody else. You're going to be a step behind, a step below everything that we're talking about. You're not going to feel it in your core. Okay? Go climb a mountain. Go talk to a pretty girl. Go outside. Please. Okay.
No, like I
Sorts of
said in chat,
horrific
this
things
is what no pulp does to a man.
It is. I feel like even a little bit of Tolkien would have helped this guy. The sense of camaraderie that people play through when they're going through these events. Of one of your party members goes down, and a bunch of your hirelings and men at arms at the same time. It's really fun to add a few combat barks to that, right? Because But the roleplay in those situations, I feel like the roleplay isn't like a substitute for the game. The roleplay is actually additive when it comes to the game.
Yeah.
Jack Kingsbury, do not sun your balls. Okay, your balls are extremely sensitive to sunlight and UV radiation.
But no, these guys will argue that myth is much better.
Oh, Urbanski's a huge fan of that.
Yup.
The Odyssey is more important than Appendix N for understanding how to run a good D&D campaign. It's like, God, this guy is just so. He's just you have to craft stupidity like this, like in an artificial bubble. It doesn't just arise naturally out of the earth.
Happen, and this I don't want to back too much into this sort of previous Twitter screed.
Yeah.
This idea about like gold being the justification, like that's that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
As the be all end all motivation.
Oh yeah.
Why
Also,
is
for all you guys,
why is your character doing this?
Yeah, I went and I got the AD&D DMG. I will say, much more interesting read than every other DMG. But I went and I looked at the XP for gold thing, and Gygax completely hand waves it away. He says, "Well, some people say that that gold for XP doesn't make any sense, and they just don't get it." I don't remember exactly what he said, but I read it and I was just like, wrong. I was like, this is lame. And he also, this is another thing where it's like, sorry, Gygax was 100% wrong about this when he claimed that these games are only a pastime, just a way to turn off your brain and have an enjoyable pastime where you use your imagination a little bit. I'm sorry, like we 12 men went to the moon, or whatever it is, and we came back. We have climbed the peak. We have experienced something that is far better and far more.
Is that what Gygax claims? Is that it's just a pastime? Or is that what he claims in that way? I feel like he talks about like the most fun for the greatest number of people to enjoy.
I don't know. I feel like these guys are talking like they are professional role players or something.
I'd much rather sit down and talk with Matt Mercer than about that.
Oh yeah.
And I love Matt Mercer. So maybe I am biased. But I feel like people who actually I feel like the people that these guys are putting on a little bit of a character act right now to try and appear as like the contrarians that the OSR, like the shadow people that the OSR is ostensibly arguing about. They've constructed a shadow argument for the OSR to be 100% behind, and they're acting as if they are going to fulfill this role of being the shadow people. They're going to agree and amplify it. The problem is, they don't understand. One, they don't understand the AD&D DMG. That was a reference actually to what they were just talking about here at the stream that I did on them, where Aaron and I went through the AD&D DMG and found that like a single page 90, wiped out about 90% of the arguments that they were making. Stuff they claimed was not in the Dungeon Master's Guide, stuff they claimed was not a part of the game, either explicit, their exact words verbatim, neither explicitly nor implicitly anywhere in any of these games. So, actually, I feel like, hey, Dundermoose or Bradford or anybody who has AD&D DMG on them, I have one next to me. I don't know what page it is. So if you happen to have like the page number, I'll pull it up. But I'll let these guys continue for a moment.
Fulfilling and far more creatively interesting than that experience, and it is, you're just missing out. You are just missing out.
Yeah, and this no doubt will be a separate episode we do. But that mindset, that poisonous mindset, this like retarded idea that
poisonous
any expectation of any effort into role playing the character or creating the game, tending to the game as a GM, that's just work. Taking it too seriously is 100% wrong. There is no middle ground. There's no wiggle room. That is absolutely 100% incorrect. Anything that is enjoyable, anything, even by your own definition, even a quote-unquote pastime, something like watching a movie, something like playing sports, something like reading a book, anything that you do passively is by definition not something that matters or is engaging to you. If you want to have meaningful experience, if you want to actually enjoy something, whatever it
Is reading a book that passive?
Oh,
I I wasn't expecting this. I wasn't expecting the hobby dick measuring to come out. Where people say, football is better than video games, and video games better than football, and I have depicted you as the soy Wojak.
how do you passively read a book?
You know what? Based on
Can you
all,
read it? No.
no, because that's extremely active. You know how? These two do. I gotta let's see. Windows Shift S. Yeah. Good. Anyways, given these guys read of the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Edition Dungeon Master's Guide, I have no doubt in my mind that reading actually can be a passive activity. It's where you look at the page, you let a soft gust of wind turn them for you, and you look in the general direction. And then you close the book and inform everybody that you have read it, you know everything that's inside. You interact with the book more than you read it. I didn't mean to nitpick. I understand now.
might be to its fullest extent and get the most fulfillment out of it, you have to lean into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the idea that this is the sort of race to the bottom mentality, that
Yes.
any quality is therefore is sort of ipso facto bad. You know, or
And that if you
you're
focus
a
on
rules Nazi or whatever, you're
Yeah.
an actor. Like, no.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And here's the other thing: is I know a lot of actors. I used to be one, and the actors that I played with, I
Oh.
figured, you know what, these guys they know what they're doing. They'll be pretty good at these games.
Yeah?
Explains a lot.
It's a shame. Listen, everybody in the chat, I don't
What
want
I-
these guys giving actors a bad name. I don't want these guys messing up the good name of Critical Role. Or Dimension 20. Sorry, you were saying?
No, I have nothing.
It'll be a lot of fun. They were terrible. Every single one of them, with the exception of Gibbs, who's in our cyberpunk game. But we started role playing before we got into, into acting in theater.
Mhm.
All of them were terrible. So this, like, put the actor thing out of your mind. It's not what this is.
Right.
It's not what it is.
No. Whether you use voices or not,
This
the
dog
goal
is like fighting physically to get under the table to annoy me right now. So that's what's happening.
Yeah.
Nick, please continue.
Yeah, but yeah, this notion is completely counter to what we're putting forth. We're putting out there the broad message of trying to put over that immersive style.
Right. You
Go
get
back-
immersion by role playing.
Exactly, no other way. And to loop back real quick on backstories.
This is what EOTV mentioned earlier today in today's chat. Story Gamers, I'm going to quote him as best as I possibly can. It was almost a throwaway comment, but it was brilliant. So, EOTV, if I screw any of this up, I will happily put a revision in the chat. Okay. EOTV said, immersion is the word of the day for these folks. It is what they constantly talk about. It's the locus or the lodestone for their entire ideology. Everything is about immersion, but they describe immersion as talking in first person. But that's not really what immersion in tabletop games is. That's not what the experience of immersion is in tabletop games. Immersion in tabletop games is where you look up and you find that 3 hours have passed because you haven't noticed the passage of time. Immersion in tabletop games is where everybody is sort of volleying the ball back and forth between the party and the DM. Events are happening constantly throughout the course of the game, such that it's so quickly and with such vigor and interest on the part of the party that nobody pulls out their phones. Nobody is shaking their head from side to side or looking away or looking for some sort of stimulation off screen, off the table, so to speak. Everybody is paying attention, everybody is interested in the events of the game, and nobody is attempting to hamstring it or impede the progress of what's happening. It's those nights where everybody runs through more combat encounters than they could imagine, that where nobody misses a turn because they weren't prepared to go, where nobody misses a beat, or when the party is stumped, everybody, one person always has a next action to take. That's immersion in role-playing game. And I have to fully endorse this, because I've almost certainly added a little bit of my own language onto this, but EOTB was, as far as I'm concerned, completely and totally correct. That's immersion. It's not when one person in your party wants to speak in character about what kind of hash browns are available at the tavern, which is apparently run by his uncle.
You nailed it.
It's like, what? Okay, have you been have you been in a table with like somebody who's like who keeps interrupting to like try to get like an in character word in?
Yeah, I've been at those tables.
How do you feel when that happens?
Not very good.
Like, do you get bored? Do you ever pull them aside? Like, what's your reaction? There's no wrong answer to this. It could be like as passive or active as you've had an experience, I guess, or wanted to
No,
have.
I'm just thinking to when I'm a player, I just kind of zone out in those moments.
So like the opposite of immersion.
Yes, exactly.
But when somebody is role playing, feels like feels like what these guys describe as role playing, speaking in first person and having an and obsessing over the internal experience of your character's inner world.
It kind of pushes others away from the game.
Like it's selfish, almost. Like you're using it as...
Now I'm really curious. I want to see these guys as actual plays.
I feel like these guys probably exemplify all the things that people usually complain about when it comes to Critical Role. Yeah, this guy's just hogging the spotlight. This guy's not contributing, stuff like that. But I think one of the reasons why people love Critical Role is like they're generally, those guys generally speaking, not only did they play exactly the same way off camera than before they started doing it on camera, but they also like they're generally speaking very respectful of one another. Like if one person's getting bored, or if one person's if like two people have split off to go do something, generally speaking, they're pretty respectful of time. They don't like go through each and every beat one at a time, even if they might accidentally slip into that. Like Matt Mercer's generally speaking pretty on point about trying to keep the game moving along. So like switch back to other character perspectives to see what they're doing to make sure that like events are still happening. See here, Purple Druid says they think role-playing is method acting. Bradford Walker asks, they have session reports. No, they don't believe in session reports. Session reports, in the minds of these people, actually does not count as proof that you've been running a game. You have to record it and post it for other people to review. Which does make me curious now. I can hold it no longer. Let's go to videos.
No, go to live.
Oh, is it going to be on? It might be on live. They do have an actual play.
Ooh,
they have
shit.
2 sessions. I'm just going to skip through. They have 2 sessions.
All right. Looks like we're live. Let us know in the chat if you can indeed hear us.
The West as well, mixing with the salt water of the Atlantic Ocean, the refuse of Hialeah, of the less well-to-do areas of Miami, the well outside imprints of Staples, such as yourself. But I can only deflect so much. Despite my good and gracious disposition.
Where I can.
I think he talked for like 10 minutes straight there.
Homey feeling.
At least.
Fire blues and obsidian blacks, mirror shine, and spotless.
Bro, this is like when fanfiction writers describe, his eyes were cerulean blue orbs. It's so bad. I'm sorry. Okay, to be clear, I think this is actually probably fine, because I think actual plays are boring and in no way representative of the fun that you might be having at the table. Unfortunately, their position is that it is representative of the fun that you're having at the table, and that the actual play has to be posted so other people can review their experience of the actual play and determine whether or not you had a good game. God, fuck these idiots! We're gonna skip through this, finish up.
Beat by beat plotline. If you have a zealous convert to some faith, if you have a knight or a soldier, a man-at-arms who is a loyalist to a particular noble or to the crown, if you are a rogue who had a stable, quote-unquote, normal life, and through circumstances or betrayal, maybe your character was sort of put over and is now living in degradation. All of those character concepts, all of those personalities imply things which characters aren't going to interact with.
Do they ever manage how all of this adds to the game? Or like,
No.
Why? This is good? No.
No, I have a thesis statement at the end of this, though, and it's going to be... it's going to seem uncharitable. It's actually not. It is actually probably... I might be able to give these guys some advice.
Build off of those things. You build off of what is engaging and interesting and meaningful to the characters. That is what the world is built from. That is
The
what
world
himself is built from. You don't need...
Not the milieu. This summer.
Of a nation an ocean away. It is not going to matter. If you happen to play a very long game, and maybe at some point you end up going there, then okay, then you can fill that in then. But don't dump meaningless information as a GM crafting a world to the players. Conversely, don't write a 12-page novella filled with fluff and uninteresting things, or overly, clearly taking narrative control and dictating the future of your character. Don't present that to the GM.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another thing to consider is that as a GM, when you're building a world and you're emulating this world, the player characters are a part of that world. You know, this is, you can't ignore that. And there's not, I think you miss out.
The world. This was the main thrust of an argument I was having in Aaron's server quite recently. Yeah, Doof, I'm so sorry that these guys have just more or less been repeating themselves for an hour. This could have been a 5-minute video. And they probably would have said more.
I agree completely.
It's just, this is the thrust of an argument I was having in Aaron's server, where I kept saying, it's like, people are there for the game. They're not there for your world. They're not there for your milieu. The game, when they look in the rulebook, they're getting certain promises from one E. Gary Gygax at the moments in which he wrote that rulebook. And they want to see those events play out in-game, right? They want to take advantage of that. They want to see the specifics of a random encounter table don't really matter, but the thing that makes a random encounter table cool is seeing the moment where the GM rolls, they look down at the result, and you see them working behind the scenes, behind their eyes, their brain, sputtering and cobwebs being flung to the side as their brain sort of restarts and reactivates, and a little bit of a creative spark escapes that makes its way onto the table, and the DM, if they have an IQ above 80, explains why a dragon is next to the starting town. It's cool. That's a fun experience. There's spontaneity and creativity that gets shared between the entire table, as opposed, and maybe, no, we'll save it for the end of the, save it for the end of the video, but so that my momentum isn't cut off. Page 85. Yes, I did see that, you guys. I will get to that. I hugely appreciate you. I actually have my BMG open next to me, so I could open it up. But these guys hate those sorts of mechanics that actually have to do with improvised creativity. I'm going to explain why at the end of this, but just know they hate reaction rolls. They hate anything that doesn't give them complete and total control over the NPCs. They probably hate morale checks. They have their general thrust of things is that they are in control of the world. Because there is a story that they have to maintain. And while they don't want to force players into failing at specific points, they don't want to force players into managing into certain successes. They do have specific beats that they're interested in the players going through, and it's fine for them to fail by accident or through bad rolls, but it's not okay for them to succeed as such. It's not okay for them to recover specific advantages. And I think this entire video is compensating for, or realistically speaking, coping for that instinct. Let's get through the last of this.
You come up with completely flimsy characters from the outset. You don't, again, in a deadly system, you don't want to put in a relative high amount of work on those things because, you want to be able to get back into the game quickly, come up with a character, maybe roll up, some random background detail and fill it out, like we've said, but that you don't want to go in with nothing. Like, it makes no sense. It really just makes no sense. And if the idea is to emulate a world that, an internally consistent world, so even if you have some bizarre, gonzo fantasy world, whatever,
sure,
that still needs to have some sort of logic and internal consistency to it. And the idea that anyone just spawns in as a blank slate is ridiculous, and that you're then going to discover who this person is over time. If you don't have any notion of who they are from the beginning, unless your character is like amnesiac or something, like it just makes no fucking sense, and it makes for a very.
It just makes no sense. I really gotta do that video on sense. I'm gonna save that for once I have more subscribers. I keep encountering it in the out in the wild. But when people spam just like this makes no sense, what they're saying is they don't want to do the work to justify something that should be relatively obvious or clear out of spite. Like a child stamping their foot in a tantrum. They're upset that something has not been done for them. Some detail or artifact of the design hasn't bridged a gap between two events, or two implied setting details, or two questions that their players had, even, or two questions that they had, and they could do the work. They could manage it. They could just sit down and play. But out of spite or a desire to maximize human suffering, as particularists would say, they've decided that no, they're not going to do that. Because really, it's quite like, here's my question: why couldn't somebody invent a character story like 3 sessions in?
There's no reason.
I've done it. I have current players who do it who are like, let me get a few sessions into the campaign and then I'll think about a story. I just want to see what's going on.
Yeah.
Why would that be so bad? Why not just have a blank slate? Like, hey, I'm a name, I'm a character sheet. I just want to see what's going on before I start revealing or inventing, putting more investment in. Oh, that is it. Okay, time to keep skipping.
Engaged in something that is interesting, evocative, and consistent with the logic of that world.
Yeah.
You have to roleplay. You have to engage roleplay. You have to put in some degree.
You gotta speak first-person character. You gotta ask gotta ask the barkeep about his potatoes.
Things are relevant to a character, to a certain extent, are going to change depending on the genre, depending on the game. Some things will not. Core personality traits, core traumatic events, or great victories, or sort of emotional triumphs, those are going to be resonant with any sapient creature. But a D&D, what you want to put over in, let's say, to make a D&D character come to life is going to be somewhat different than what a cyberpunk character.
Yeah, I mean it's
or a vampire character.
different.
Yeah,
different
yeah,
genres
those
that
are
you're producing.
yeah. Okay.
All the agency in
Cool.
the world.
Thank you guys. Very insightful
Matt,
commentary.
if you procedurally generate every step that you take on your journey for some retarded reason, all of that agency means nothing if there is no character. That's another thing. Like I think so the idea of player agency, it's not entirely wrong, but more than player agency. It's not so much player agency, it's character agency. You, the player, should not overly be thinking about what to do as a player, or what is strategically relevant, or what is mechanically advantageous. The choices that are made, the freedom that a game with a significant amount of agency provides.
My character is interested.
Let
Go
him
ahead.
finish.
Provides it to the characters. The characters are in the world, not the players. So that's another misnomer. It's another missed.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and if
It's a notion that's not.
All right, are you satisfied?
I just don't get this idea of. It's almost like they are saying that the characters are playing the game, not the players.
Because that's the only way to get any enjoyment out of it. If you, according to these guys, remember, if you remember that you are playing a game, the roleplay is the best part of this. If you remember that you're playing a game, you've just like lost out on some of your enjoyment.
Right.
But here's the problem. This is actually just the old repackaged metagaming argument for a group. This is the old repackaged metagaming argument for a section or slice of the hobby that doesn't care about metagaming because it, generally speaking, doesn't afford them with any real advantages. So I find it fascinating that these people want to, what is realistically speaking, gimp your character further by virtue of having certain bonds, flaws, motivations, etc. that you otherwise wouldn't worry about in a game where you're likely to die from session to session. This is so stupid. How about, all right, you want to insist that I am playing a character and not, it's the character playing the game, not me. It's the character's agency, not mine. Okay, I have decided that my character's backstory is that he's a very strategic fellow who wants to be a military commander and always thinks his character ideal, his motivation, is always doing the most strategically optimal thing, whatever benefits him the most in the moment. Now what? Is that a bad character?
I think you've broken the game.
I might have broken the game. I might have broken, what's realistically speaking, his agency. Because I think he understands implicitly that OSR games are too low agency for him. Maybe they ran into a couple of meat grinders, right? The Mudcore games. They ran into a couple of Mudcore games. And they decided, this was, Party initially theorized that they ran into a couple of Mudcore games, and this bounce back is what is the result of that Mudcore game. But I think what they decided was because they have no mechanical agency, that they have to impose limitations and procedures on themselves in roleplay, like in-character roleplay, literal method acting, so they can feel like they've taken some agency back into the game. That the asking the tavern keep, who, reminder, is their uncle, as they've decided before session 0, about what's on the menu today, is in some way compensating for a bad roll on their weapon attack. My character doesn't know trolls are vulnerable to fire, so it's cheating to cast Fireball. And in response, this guy says, but maybe I could roleplay out how terrified I am of the troll. And I'm taking a little bit back into the game. I'm putting me back into the game. Because they don't know how to win D&D. It's a shame. They don't know that you can win D&D.
These guys are so bad at D&D, they don't know they can win.
They probably don't think it's possible. They think like, oh well, winning at D&D is just having a lot of fun and speaking in character. It's like, no, they don't know about characters who can set goals. They don't know about players who can set goals, go chase those goals, mechanically affect the world in a way that produces a reasonable chance that they'll be able to accomplish those goals and then hopefully succeed. Right? They don't know that your goal can be, I'm a first level fighter, I want to get an army, I want to go take over Trilopolis, I want all those bitches to myself. They don't know that that's possible to actually accomplish. They feel like that's something that the DM has to do for you.
No, it makes total sense for these guys' first OSR experience to be some mudcore meat grinder.
What else? I feel like they were buck broken by BX.
Yes, and then they thought, hey, this is what it's all about.
Of course, the most fun part is the roleplay. What else could it be? All right, we're gonna skip through a little bit more.
It's imposed upon the world. It doesn't make sense on its own terms in the world.
Doesn't make sense.
The character, it's a completely external motivation that is imposed upon the world. It doesn't make sense on its own terms in the world, as presented.
Wait, what's an external motive?
And whatnot, and I get that. It aligns your behavior with that style of a game, but the character, it doesn't align with the character. It's a completely external motivation.
What doesn't align with the character?
Like if you want to play this shit tier experience where you're dungeon delving, gold for XP is a great means of motivating you as a player to go out there and to attempt to maybe you're more cautious and whatnot. And I get that. It aligns your behavior with that style of a game, but the character, it doesn't align with the character. It's a completely
There are mercenaries inside the player's handbook, you dumb motherfucker. There are literally soldiers of fortune, people who are motivated by gold in the rulebook. If that wasn't enough for you, there's mercenaries today all over the goddamn world. I don't know if you noticed some of the... Doof, how do you pronounce Landsknit? Let's hear it.
I'm not a swampy, so I wouldn't know.
No. Okay. Landsknit pronunciation. Let's start with that. Pronunciation German, pronunciation swamp German. Let's see here. Were these the let's see here.
They were German.
Landsknecht.
God.
Landsknecht.
Oh, Landsknecht. Landsknecht. Okay. I probably still butchered it a little bit. But these the mercenaries? Were Germanic mercenaries used in pike and shot formations during the early modern period. Now, curiously enough, I don't know if Black Lodge... Well, sorry, I know that Black Lodge Games doesn't know this, because the fine folks at Black Lodge Games don't read. At least not actively. Reading to them is a passive activity. So they don't know that the Landsknecht appear in chainmail and AD&D and were themselves mercenaries. They were mercenaries. They were soldiers of fortune from our own real-world history. Because, as we've discussed earlier, people do things. They risk life and limb for the sake of adrenaline and will pay for it. They will pay for the opportunity to nearly die because it provides them, whatever activity they're engaged in has provided them with such thrill and excitement, right? And if we knew that if somebody could pay you to go skydiving, a lot of people would do it, okay? A lot of people have gone digging for buried treasure throughout the years, which is extra curious to me because have you ever heard of Indiana Jones?
No.
Okay. Just to, in case anybody hasn't heard of Indiana Jones, Indiana Jones is a professor, so he's a rather erudite fellow, who runs around with a bullwhip and revolver, going into various third world countries looking for special artifacts or objects of note or historical significance, right? And often a fair bit of monetary value at the same time, risking life and limb. If Indiana Jones also got a whole bunch of gold at the end of that process, would we like think of it less? Like would we think that's less of a character because he got paid? I mean, presumably he makes a living somehow. Nobody questions it. He doesn't go back. He doesn't go homelessness after this. God, it's just so stupid. It's just so stupid. There's mercenaries in the real world. There's people who do dangerous shit in the real world for money. Some of them are from America. I almost said BlackRock. Blackwater was one of them. Brian James says, we like Indiana Jones, but these two guys are seeking a daytime drama that housewives watch.
It's psychotic. It really is psychotic.
It is psychotic.
Psychotic!
I do not understand how or why this is difficult to understand, or difficult to...
It's not difficult to understand. We're operating at a plane that is about like 3 or 4 standard deviations higher than your IQ allows. And that's why it's going over your head. And because you've refused to do the basic action of 1, going to the gym, and 2, playing in one of these games, it is forever barred from your access, from your understanding. You are so far behind that you think you're ahead.
Shut my brain off and I will play like a trash tier game. Okay, but surely you should be able to recognize that this is a lower experience. A trash movie is not as good as a well put together, a well shot, a well acted,
yes,
a really engaging movie. This is not difficult, and
yeah,
coming up with your character's personality, your character's backstory, the things which matter to the character. That's literally the easiest thing. Even if you don't, we can all get better at everything and think about different things.
Yeah.
It should be immediately apparent. It should spring
if you
to your
have
mind.
Any creativity at all, this isn't hard. It doesn't take a long time. Like, just do it. Like, it's not that.
Just do it.
I don't get it. I really just don't get it.
Yeah. Like, again, you're not writing on the character sheet.
Kills monsters. He gets the girl. He conquers. He becomes a king. Like all of this great stuff. But like if you want to emulate that, you need to role play the character. We're not doing that for pulp fantasy adventures, as if there's going to be some sort of
let's see here
story in this context.
Right.
Again, like the terminology is mind-blowingly annoying. But here's the thing, Conan didn't spawn into the world.
Conan is a real character.
Yeah, Conan is a real character. He has motivations. He has a pretty clear philosophy that drives his actions. And he's fucking awesome. And yeah, he does. He kills monsters. He gets the girl. He conquers. He becomes a king. Like all of this great stuff. But
I wonder
to emulate that.
If Conan would adventure for gold.
No, I think that's out of the question, actually. I love how these guys are able to, like, I feel like we're interacting with cryptids at this point, like these weird skin suit people. Or like, yes, they like Conan. Let's talk about Conan for a moment.
I mean, these guys aren't even on the Dunning-Kruger graph. Like, no.
They're in the tar pits that all the failed subjects got mulched and dumped into.
You need to roleplay the character.
Right, and this is another thing.
Wait, here's the thing. No, I don't. I can kill monsters, get the girl, I can collect loot, and I can become a king, all without saying a single goddamn word in the first person.
Bro?
These guys aren't aware of that, is the issue. Like, they don't know that that's even a possibility. They don't understand that this is available to them because they don't know how to win a D&D.
Somebody should just run a proper game for them.
Oh, sorry. Okay, Purple Druid Presents Wargame Culture says, I wonder if they could roleplay how their character would have felt last night if their character didn't get breakfast and lunch yesterday. But my character did have breakfast and lunch yesterday.
God.
That's really good. Oh god. This occurred to me that they have their own chat replay. I wonder what those guys are saying.
So having, as a player, having a defined concept of your character, that does not mean that the character themselves is a very like lawful, has their whole like worldview and ideology sort of figured out. Conan has a very basic, very instinctual like worldview, but it's very clear, it's very defined. Even though Conan does not have a philosophy as such, he doesn't have.
It's so simple, it could be defined as just the writer moving through him, such as a character just making actions or declaring actions where their character would be in a role-playing game. It doesn't influence your, it doesn't, the paladin player saying, well, it's undead, so I'm gonna smite him. I'm gonna kill him. I see undead over there, I heard there's undead over here, I think that's where we go next. That is a character, even though he's never said anything in the first person. That is a character.
A defined ideology and a particular dogma in the way that someone else might be. Maybe
not
you're
in the sense of like a like a religion,
can engage in Socratic dialogue about his own opinions and no, even someone who, in our own world, a lot of people act unconsciously or semi-consciously, but that doesn't mean that they don't have some kind of an ethos or some
Like
kind
there's
of
nothing
motivation.
going on
Such as-
behind the eyes.
it's just all it's also tiresome. Like it is just also tiresome. People
People who push back on this,
You
I don't
have
even think
Black
it's that they don't
Lodge
get it.
emojis on your server?
They're about to get added. I feel like I have like the Linus Tech Tick. Like, we got to put them on air in the Pedantic server.
Yes. I don't know how. I mean, Aaron just made a video on them, so they are relevant.
Emoji request. I shouldn't be doing this in the middle of the stream, but what the hell? I can do what I want.
I'm praying for a hyperbole.
They choose
We need a
not to.
or they're
hyperbole.
incapable of getting it.
They're incapable,
Which is
or
possible.
I don't know which is worse. Like, it's a nonsense conflict. This is self-evidently true.
The recent hyperboles on the air in the Pedantic Discord server have been low energy, subject to the most base, uninteresting, dare I say woke, gaslighting attempts, and nothing else. Actors acting in bad faith as bad actors have thrown aside and dragged the conversation into the weeds for too long. We need a new hyperbole.
Yeah, I agree.
Now,
the case in
what's
every
the
single
perfect
source of media.
lineup
you
for
can't-
a Black Lodge hyperbole?
Okay, so how did the last one go? How the last one? Because the last hyperbole was like, Noten.
Really?
It was a lot of
What was
Noten.
that?
It was ages ago. Okay, you know what it was? It was after the inappropriate characters appearance that Jeffro had, and my subsequent interview with Aaron and Jeffro.
Oh yeah.
Like 100 different results. And
Dude,
5 results from
im-
users you blocked.
Dude, just imagine a conversation between Party and these guys. That's like painful.
I looked up hyperbole instead of hyperbole. Where's that hyperbole? Can I view thread? Let's see here. I can view threads. Pedantic bestiary. There it is. Broasar hyperbole. from 2022. Yeah, we need another one. It was a lot of like me arguing with Crafty Matt. Let's see here. There was Noten was arguing, Carl, someone named Yan, who I haven't seen in the server for ages. I was going by Appendix N Terrorist back then. Let's see here. Let's see here. Yeah, Ranos was that was one of the first times I went back and met Ranos. Okay, we do need another one.
No, Macbeth didn't just spawn in. John Wick didn't just spawn in. You know, Paul Atreides didn't just spawn in. You know, none of these characters, plays, movies, books. Nucky Thompson didn't just spawn in. Tony Soprano.
Solomon Kane spawned in. He literally spawns in. The first thing he does is he goes along, he finds a Tarzan just spawns in, realistically speaking. It's not that you can't invent a character backstory for these people, but like the backstory has no realistic effect, is not critical to the actions that they perform. You meet Solomon Kane walks along a road, he finds a French woman who's been like raped and beaten to death, he says, "Men shall die for this," and that is the character. That is the entirety of the character. He can speak in first person, but the entirety of the explanation for Solomon Kane is that. Fuck, Corwin of Amber, Nine Princes in Amber, literally spawns in with amnesia. He was literally the inspiration for the illusionist class, and the first time you meet him, he is literally an amnesiac. John Carter just spawned in. Kimball Kinnison, Elric of Melniboné, Tarzan, they all just spawn in.
3 Hearts and 3 Lions, too.
Spawned in.
Yup.
Jeez.
I don't know. I think that we've probably covered pretty much everything on this.
Oh, well, I'm glad that you guys spent 54 minutes to say, make me an uncle that you have in town that is not going to be important in 5 sessions. Because, and I've been teasing it the entirety of this stream, this is the end of our review on these folks. I'm going to ask Doof's opinion in just a moment. But the reason these guys ask for backstories from their characters is they are worried that they do not have enough initial forward momentum, enough fuel to keep the game going past the first session. That is it. I will not be accepting alternative explanations. I'm just correct about this. These guys are worried that people are not going to be invested in the game enough to show up for a second session because they implicitly believe that role-playing games are boring mechanically. And unless the person prospective players, declare that they have some investment, like preloaded investment into the game, they think it's all going to fall apart because they probably don't know how to run a mechanically interesting game. They could definitely stumble into it, right? I have declared previously, and I maintain that you can run a mechanically interesting game, mostly by just stumbling into it, right? Just run the mechanics of the game, follow a bunch of random encounters, make up relatively, if it strikes your fancy, if it suits your fancy, make up a few relatively creative and intelligent explanations for why those random encounters are there. Don't get in the player's way. Give them, be gracious with loot and advancement, and mostly just stay out of the player's way as they go gallivanting across the countryside, collecting loot and getting items. And they typically will, especially in a game like that, they typically will just invent their own goals or find some set detail of the setting to like latch onto that's particularly important to them, and they'll go do it. I've been running West Marches for over 5 years now, and it's just the way the game works. And sometimes players do come to the table with a preset goal in mind. But it's not necessary to run a mechanically interesting game. It's not necessary to keep the game going. And these guys don't know that because they are terrified of people hating it. So they have to demand some front-loaded investment. That was the word I was looking for earlier. They have to demand some front-loaded investment on the part of the players to validate their role as a GM because they are worried. They're touching their hands together like that one emoji that's blushing and saying, well, guys, I hope you like this game. Can you tell me who your uncle is? Can you tell me who your character's uncle is? And that's why they don't want it to be anything that comes up later in the game. That's why they don't want it to be... That's why they don't want it to affect how the world interacts with the characters. They only want it to affect how the characters interact with the world. Because they don't know if the players are going to stick around past the first session. They had a terrible experience, and they're terrified that everybody at all times is sharing this terrible experience. It's why they think talking about mashed potatoes with your uncle the barkeep is the most fun, the most important things in these games, and not the cool shit that you can do in tabletop games that video games and board games don't allow. They're not focused on the conceits of the medium, they think they are.
Yep, my thoughts exactly.
Oh, fuck, I was gonna ask you what you thought.
These guys have never played in a good game. They have never run a good game, and they, as long as they think like this, they're never going to.
I don't want to run a game like the Browazar. Do not worry, my friend. Do not worry, my hairless Sid the Sloth looking ass. You never will. It's fine. Never concern yourself with running a game like that. Alright, so do you want to stick around for some Twitter drama? I'm going to run through it in the next 20 minutes. And then I'm going to cap it off at the top of the hour. Alrighty. So, we have the responses to Black Lodge Games when they first posted this.
Oh.
From John Mollison, who I love so much. He says, why we talk past each other? You can play your role even if you've never once spoken in character. A bro playing a thief who scouts, climbs, backstabs, and steals is playing the game, in quotes, or in parentheses, in accordance with his role, in parentheses, in the party. Even if he paraphrases every conversation with NPCs. And we need a new word for improv time at the game table, something to distinguish role as in a character at a stage play, and role as in a function within the D&D campaign or party. These guys don't think. A scene in 2 acts. Me, I hire a torchbearer. DM, how? Well, I pay a silver a day and add a non-combat NPC to my roster. The DM says, a likely youth hears the word of your job, approaches you and says, G'day. Venturer, mightst thou require mine torchy services? What do you say back to him? The players say, do we really got to do this? The DM says, yes, we do. It's my game, and this is the most important part of the game. The lad says, my name is Eldenary the Curious. What, pray tell, is thine? My character falls on my sword. It's just like, what is the most... I'm just trying to hire a guy to hold my torch. It's like, no, you gotta speak in first person. It's the most important part of the game. No! No! And of course, my response was, what was it? Let's see here. Why does anyone take advice on being spontaneous from someone who can't use mechanics like reaction rolls? I'm not interested in what people think of, like, story and being creative and being spontaneous. If they don't know how to use basic mechanics. Let's see here. What did they say? Yeah, so that was mostly that. I'm going to pull up some stuff that Jeffro asked me to address.
Let's see.
It's right here. see here. It has more to do with the one-to-one time stuff because again, this was all like rolling in the same space more or less. Which reminds me, on the golden XP thing, this guy says that Gary just hand waves it. That's not exactly correct. Gary's note on why he uses gold as XP says, players who balk at equating gold pieces to experience points should be gently but firmly reminded that in a game, certain compromises must be made. While it is more realistic for clerics to study holy writings, pray, chant, practice, self-discipline, etc. to gain experience, it would not make a playable game. Roll along. That's an interesting turn of phrase I'm not familiar with. Similarly, fighters should be exercising, riding, smiting pelts, tilting at the lists, and engaging in weapon practice of various sorts to gain real expertise, in parentheses, experience. Magic users should be deciphering old scrolls, searching ancient tomes, experimenting alchemically, and so forth, while thieves should spend their off hours honing their skills, casing various buildings, watching potential victims, and carefully planning their next job. All very realistic, but conducive to non-game boredom. Judicious application. Let's see here. Oh, no, that was the end of it. This is all stuff that you can't really play through at the table, is the problem. You could say, my character is going to go practice with his sword in a field. He doesn't have anything to do right now. It's not hand-waving it. Is that Gygax makes the claim at the very least. He doesn't just dismiss it. He makes the claim that it's not something you can do in-game. It's not something that has a mechanical impact on how people are going to interact with the campaign world. So they don't want to do it. Let's see here. So one of the things that was brought up was one of the things stressed in the original game of D&D was the importance of recording game time with respect to each and every player character in a campaign. In AD&D, it is emphasized even more. You cannot have a meaningful campaign if strict time records are not kept. Probably one of those building blocks we've been talking about. RPG Pundit said that keeping careful time records doesn't mean believe some nonsense Jeffro invents 40 years after Gary wrote that. RPG Pundit, we've tried to point him to page 37. He doesn't seem to acknowledge that 1 week of game time is supposed to be 1 week of actual time is supposed to represent 1 week of game time, or 1 day in real time is supposed to represent the passage of day in game time. But we've tried to explain this over and over, but he doesn't know anything. And go ahead.
No, you can't really expect Pundit to listen.
He's invested so much in just inventing stuff that has nothing to do with the original game, pretending that certain stuff in the original game wasn't there, and then selling product based off that. That's his advertising. So this guy, Ledge Hermit, said, if you've run D&D for decades, you know Gary was correct with this practical statement, and can, looking back, recall the times you fudged time and got things confused, and no, accurate records are really helpful, but one-to-one time where you're doing it wrong is an invented absurdity. Jeffro said this is correct, and they're going back and forth on that. I'm not drinking the one-to-one time Kool-Aid. Ledge Hermit says, I object to decrees which remove the management of time from my own reasonably capable hands. It's not that I'm not interested in your time experiments, I am. My group just had a lengthy adventure hiatus over winter and we went with it, but I wasn't giving it 15 sessions. And there's a bunch of stuff. Jeffro, again, posts the actual screen cap of, where it is explained that, yes, you're supposed to use 1 actual day equaling 1 game day when no play is happening. 1 week of actual time equals 1 week of game time. And this guy says, well, maybe Gary's advice on this topic is a foreground issue for you because it's super useful in your game due to the number of player characters. But I run a smaller game and my PCs separate at times and the timeline needs more careful management. Your points are relevant, but just for a smaller game. This is something I addressed in my one-to-one time video over and over and over again. It was spawned off a thread that I had to tweet about at some point.
Well, yeah, yes, you can have strict time records without one-to-one time. It is just that one-to-one time makes it so much easier to manage everything.
And it's the best! Because, like, it's the one that your players sort of, like, know about.
Yeah, it trains your players from an early level to manage their time.
Like, literally manage their time. If they want to, like, get something done in downtime, they have, like, alright, you got until next session to do it. Like, I don't know why it wouldn't be, it's the phrase I believe I used in the one-to-one time video was that you need to pass time along. Time must progress in your campaign. It has to, because events need to start unfolding without really a care for your player characters. There has to be some independence of the world's events from your player characters, because otherwise your player characters can just sit around and nothing will actually happen, right?
I mean, you could still have that.
You could still have that, but you're providing them, and I have had a campaign. My first Chilmus Valley campaign went like that. The frost kept coming down. The players did nothing. My second Chilmus Valley campaign, like it's an incentive structure. People cannot respond to incentives. It's possible, but the incentives make it more likely for them to respond in a more predictable manner.
Yeah, it's the same thing as having timers in just regular gaming combat or dungeon turns.
Yeah, like
Things moving.
you might have somebody who sits in combat and still doesn't take their turn and just lets the timer run out. But generally speaking, it's agreed upon in the wider RPG community that if you put a timer down, like a sand timer or like a little cooking timer, just having that on the table,
yes,
is going to like make them speed up.
Yes.
And of course I dedicated an entire portion of the one-to-one time video talking about why it's essential. It's like even for smaller groups, because one of the things that Aaron's server loved to do in particular, not Aaron specifically, but everybody in the server would explain like, oh, well, that rule only existed or was only placed for this purpose. And because I know that, and because I'm not doing that, because I'm not running like an MMO, that means I can remove the rule and there will be no bad consequences. But of course, you and I both know that just because a rule was put into place for a specific purpose doesn't mean it doesn't have other benefits outside of that purpose. And, you know.
Yep.
All right, so that was tweet one. I think there was a second one that Jeffro wanted me to look at from the second thing. Of course, if you guys are interested in the benefits of one-to-one time for smaller games, just go look at that one, because there's an entire section dedicated to it. It was a lot of fun to make. I still think it's my best video. There's a few contenders at this point, close, but you know. This guy says, thanks for the pointers, I appreciate that, but I think you're misconstruing it's best to for you must. I take that as a guideline, what you're taking as a rule. I take as a guideline what you're taking as a rule. If you're running 18 players in different groups weaving through the timeline, this works great for you. I have 4. That doesn't matter. All the other benefits of one-to-one time still apply. Like players engaging in pickup sessions, players rushing to accomplish things because they know that the world clock is ticking, along with the IRL clock. They know that they have to go do stuff. Yeah, so this guy, he just, I don't think he really knows about anything. Let's see here. It's a stupid Rule Zero thing where people keep bringing up, they always bring up the same quotes. Here's the afterword, here's the foreword, where Gygax says, it's like, he says, let's see here. Dictums are given for the sake of the game only, for if the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons is to survive and grow, it must have some degree of uniformity, a familiarity of method, and a procedure from campaign to campaign. Within the whole, Advanced D&D is more than a framework around which individual DMs construct their respective milieu. It is above all a set of boundaries for all of the worlds devised by referees everywhere. These boundaries are broad and spacious, and there are numerous areas where they are so vague and amorphous as to make them nearly non-existent. But they are there nonetheless. And people take this as like, oh, I could just do whatever I want. I'm still playing the game.
Oh no, this is actually really interesting. This part, because I did experience it the other day when I was on Ye Old Geeks podcast. We were supposed to talk about D&D or like first edition, but since like half of the people play such a different game, it's impossible to have any meaningful conversation.
Yeah, because like if you okay, so I played a Neuromancer's game at North Texas RPG Con. He runs a really solid game. It's awesome. I'm so grateful to him for running that. I do. My only point of disappointment, funnily enough, was asking if he used the unarmed combat rules. And he used a different one. There was like a dungeon grappling system that I think came out of either second edition or maybe came out of Dragon's Foot. And like just
Oh
didn't.
man.
I was disappointed because I'm like, I'm playing a dwarf. I've got pretty sure chain.
I think you cut out.
Yep, no, you're fine. What is it? It was like there were a whole bunch of advantages for whatever reason that made me think it was going to be easier for me to hit this person with a grappling attack than it was for me to hit them with a weapon attack. And I remember that I was like, "Oh, dang, that would have been really cool to like." And imagine a game where like people are using these mechanics on the regular, and they could like advise each other on their use. Like if everybody has committed to using the random encounter tables as a baseline and occasionally re-rolling or replacing the result when something truly doesn't make sense. If everybody starts from the position that they have to use the random, they have to attempt to find some excuse to use the result. You could talk with each other about why a dragon might appear next to a starting town. Right? So if it's the first day out of the gate, a dragon might be next to the starting town because he's already landed there. He's been with the town for a few months, and he's decided that the town's decided that either they can't mount an effective defense, or they have so many resources that actually having a dragon in the next text over is a really cheap way of keeping other monsters out of the next text over. So they're fine with it. It's just like an expense. It's a tax to be safer, and they're fine. They decided it's okay. At the very least, it's better than trying to lose half their men at arms to clear out one monster and then maybe get another one. A few months in, my answer might be different for that. Like a dragon might appear because it has decided it wants to strike a similar bargain with the town, or maybe it's decided it just wants a snack on its way to some other location. If you didn't roll it in lair, if I don't know that its lair is nearby, it's decided, it's just going to grab a cow and scoot on by. It's going to grab one of the party. The party has like a horse or a pig with it, and just decides to go down, scoop up a pig. Cool. But you could, if you have like uniformity of play, you could explain these between different DMs, so they could build a canon of answers based off of because every hobby has more creative people in it, you could build a canon of answers and resources to rely upon by trusting other DMs.
Yeah.
All right, Doof, I want to thank you for hanging out with me today. I think that's my voice is going to start fading if I go past 3 hours.
I thanks for having me.
This is a lot of fun.
Sure, what like I hope to at least hear an argument from their side, but it's also shallow.
Really, like
And I
if they committed
wish
any of this to
that
writing, I think they would realize it.
yeah, I wish they if there's gonna be a stream on Aaron's channel with these guys, I hope they prepare to
Uh,
actually sell their point of view.
I think Aaron's such a nice guy, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't like offer pushback stuff like that. And the chat is definitely not going to stop from offering pushback.
The chat's gonna be amazing.
I'm going to be in there because I mean, why would I not be? But I will just be spamming like, why do you cowards keep running away over and over again? Because at this point I know, but geez. It's really disappointing to see people like this enter the hobby. I feel like they're adjacent to me in some way, but it is fun to like dunk on them for content. I guess
That's true.
it helps me figure stuff out. Like, okay, you can't. All right, what is like acceptable for a backstory? What is okay for a backstory? What do I want people to? If I want to give players some front-loaded investment, how do I take advantage of that in a way that's not dumb and exclusively for theater kids who are overly nervous and validation seeking about their first session?
Hmm.
Keep the gate. All right, buddy. I'm gonna head off. I will see you and everybody else in the chat later. It was nice to see the chat pop off tonight. I'm sorry we didn't get to as many questions as I would like, but we're trying to keep things. They just kept saying the same goddamn thing over and over and over again. It makes it very difficult to like prompt chat into new discussions. I'm gonna have to work on that in the future. There's definitely a way to do it. I'm just working with more difficult material. All right, ending stream. Everybody, have yourselves a fantastic evening. Peace.
Have a good one.